This story is about Xiao Se, a guy who lost his girlfriend and immersed himself in a game to get her back. The system alerted him to the presence of an obsidian boss. The system detected 10 minions. Should they continue? Smiling, Xiao Se said that it was annoying, but this boss was enough for him. The enraged monster reached out its huge clawed hands toward the guy, ready to grab him. Seeing that it was using a mega volley, the guy decided that he shouldn't hold back either. Activating maximum mode, he released a powerful charge of deadly energy. A few moments later, a huge energy ball appeared in front of Xiao Se. Smiling, the guy shouted furiously, "Disappear!" and delivered a devastating blow. The system congratulated him on his successful completion. Comments appeared on the internet saying that he was a god and that it was cool. People asked to be his friends. Xiao Yi was 20 years old, and he was into computer games. When he saw this game, he decided that it was easy and that he would fall asleep right away. At that moment, the phone rang, and someone shouted furiously into the receiver. Xiao Yi asked why he was yelling so much. The guy shouted furiously, asking why he was so lazy. Their new tutor said he had to come tomorrow. Angry, Shay said that he had skipped a lot of classes. Teachers always didn't care about him, so why did she? The other person replied that he was a slacker. He knew that what happened last year had a big impact on him. Seiyu shouted in frustration. Turning off the phone, he slammed it on the table and thought sadly about why. Why wasn't she the one who survived? The image of a beautiful girl came to his mind, and he was the one who destroyed her. How could he go on living after that? Hearing the vibration, Sei got angry that he couldn't calm down. A message popped up on the screen saying that he was the only player left on the last level. He couldn't even remember when he had downloaded this game. At that moment, the phone screen flashed. The system offered him to view his name and level. Sei Yu was 20 years old, 50 points. He thought what a loser he was. The system informed him that the player must remember that points could be used to buy anything. He yelled at her not to even try to fool him. If she could exchange them for anything, let her exchange them for money. A few moments later, the system reported that the exchange had been made. He had 50,000 yuan. The guy thought it couldn't be true. At that moment, he heard an insistent knock on the door. The landlady was standing at the door, shouting furiously that if Xiao Se didn't pay her rent, he would be kicked out today. What had he turned her room into? Smiling, he replied that it wasn't a lot of money at all. The surprised landlady saw that 3 million yuan had been transferred to her. He said it was 3 months' debt and the following years. She said happily that Xiao Se must have made money. Auntie always knew he was special. Let her know if he needed anything. He replied that he would be grateful if they didn't turn off his electricity. Now let him clean up and slam the door. Closing the door, he thought excitedly. Could this game be real? Looking at the photo of the girl, Xiao Se decided that if he could exchange it for anything, he would resurrect the deceased person. The system reported that he had 0 points. 1 billion points were required for resurrection. At that moment, the boy promised that he would do it. If he earned enough points, Yu Yi would be resurrected. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Xiao Se couldn't believe it was possible. He shouted furiously, "Isn't it just 1 billion points? Let Yu Yi wait for him." At that moment, the system offered him a rare task. Delighted that there were tasks here, he decided to see what they were. He clicked agree. The task was to collect trash on the street for 1 point. People passing by didn't understand what he was doing, probably a homeless person. Collecting trash on the school campus was worth 2 points. Schoolgirls looking at him decided that he was a new janitor. Collecting trash in the women's restroom, 5 points. Seiyu got angry and thought that the system was mocking him. He made his way to the women's restroom. Soon, screams rang out that there was a pervert there. They had to catch him and not let him get away. In a few days of work, Seiyu earned only 100 points. He realized that he had underestimated this game, but if it was necessary to save Yui, then it was a small price to pay. He would not back down. The system informed him that he had successfully completed 50 tasks and received a lottery ticket that he could use right away. He decided not to use it now. If he saved it for 10 years, he might receive a divine prize. For now, he needed to think of other ways. Suddenly, the guy accidentally stepped on a banana peel and, losing his balance, fell right on top of the girl. Shocked, Xiao Se realized that he had landed face first on her chest. Surprised, the girl couldn't hold on and fell to the ground with the guy. In the blink of an eye, he jumped to his feet and shouted for her to forgive him. He didn't mean it. Smiling, the girl replied that she never thought fat guys could be so bold. Holding his broken nose, he apologized and said it was an accident. She replied that he shouldn't apologize. He needed to compensate her. The stunned guy asked how he could compensate her. Thinking for a moment, the girl said that he really needed to think about how he could do that. Suddenly smiling, she shouted, How about giving all your points to your sister? Hearing her mention points, Xiao Se was shocked. Could it be that she, releasing a stream of energy, she shouted, "City Division, activate." The stunned guy saw a huge wave of energy. In a couple of moments, everything turned purple. He didn't understand what was happening. At that moment, a girl approached from behind and asked what he was looking at. Turning around, he saw huge metal claws on the girl's hands. He barely managed to dodge the attack. The system reported that his hand was damaged. Further use in battle was impossible. Licking the blood, she said that his blood was full of fat. What a fatso he was. He shouted that she was also a last resort player. Why didn't they just go their separate ways and continue completing their tasks? Laughing, the girl asked him again to go away. Was he really that stupid? Well, she would explain it to him. The real essence of this game was to earn points by destroying others. Only real idiots could complete tasks. The guy was in shock. He said it couldn't be. Smiling, she said, "Come on, why shouldn't he die and become her points? It was much better than doing tasks." Excited, Xiao Se replied no. He had more important things to do right now. The guy decided he couldn't die here and ran down the street. Seeing a guy in front of him, he decided it was perfect and shouted for him to save him. Xiao Se shouted for his brother to call the police. Someone was trying to destroy him. But when he got close, he passed right through the guy, as if he wasn't there. Seiyu was in shock. He couldn't understand what had happened. Why couldn't he touch him? A girl was approaching from behind. She said with a smirk that fat people just get in the way. The city division is a space where only players can be. Therefore, no one can save him. The prey cannot escape from the sister. She released the huge blades again. In an instant, she dealt a deadly blow to the guy and laughed that the game was over. From the crushing blow, Xiao Se lost his balance and fell to the ground with a crash. Smiling, she said that every time she saw someone die, she couldn't resist. The system reported that the player had suffered a serious heart injury. Death was possible. The guy wondered how this could have happened. Was he really going to die here? He had found a way to bring Yui back here. He couldn't die like this. Losing the last of his strength, Xiao Se heard a message come in on his phone. At that moment, he realized that his only chance of salvation was to use the lottery ticket. The system reported that the roulette wheel had been activated. He received a reward. Delighted, Xiao Se thought that now he could only rely on her. The wheel of fortune was activated. The spin began. The girl laughed. It was just a lottery system with a minimal winning percentage. Nothing special, just like his chance of survival. She wanted to see him get his lucky bag and annual VIP membership. Watching the wheel of fortune spin, Xiao Se begged for at least a healing potion. He was stunned when the phrase, "Thanks for trying," lit up on the wheel. Laughing, she said that was to be expected. It seemed that even fate was not kind to him. Losing all hope, the guy fell to the ground and mentally apologized to Yui for not being able to help. Suddenly, the girl looked at the wheel in shock. The system announced that the player had received special equipment. She had never heard of special equipment before. What was it? Rushing to the boy lying on the ground, she suddenly realized that his body was recovering. Releasing a stream of energy, she shouted furiously that she would not let the prey get away so easily. Suddenly, a huge stream of crushing energy appeared in her path. She thought she had a bad feeling. A powerful stream of energy flew past her. A few moments later, there was an explosion. She thought in shock, could this be the power of special equipment? She saw that the guy was standing on his feet, holding a weapon in his hand. He said that she had almost destroyed him, but he was lucky. And now, it was her turn. The enraged girl was in shock. She couldn't understand how such a novice could wield this powerful weapon so easily. He shouted that she was stupid. All her equipment was damaged. That would be enough to defeat such a stupid girl. Unable to contain herself, the girl laughed loudly. Did he really hope to defeat her? He was so naive. He thought this was a computer game where you could defeat your opponent only with weapons. Taking a fighting stance, she shouted furiously that now he would experience the full horror of this game. Clutching his weapon tightly, Xiao Se shouted that she shouldn't underestimate him. He would defeat her. Laughing, the girl rushed to attack Xiao Se to destroy him. Shouting furiously, he swung his weapon and struck. The girl's body became transparent. At that moment, Xiao Se heard her voice behind him. She asked where he was looking, but he was not going to give up without a fight. Clutching his sword tightly, Xiao Se struck out. The girl mocked him. What a pity she hadn't even touched him yet. Shouting furiously, he thought that if this was a game, who knows how many times he could die. She smiled, telling him to give up. With his level of strength, it was impossible to hit her with such a large sword. Let the fatso take a look at himself. He wouldn't succeed. It wasn't worth trying. At that moment, a stunned Xiao Se noticed that marks had appeared all over his body. She shouted, "Bloom like a rose." At that moment, there was a devastating explosion. He screamed in horror, but did not give up, shielding himself from the explosion with his sword. Smiling, the girl noticed with surprise that he was still standing. She was amazed by his tenacity. Waving her arms and releasing a powerful stream of energy, she shouted that this was the final blow. Let him go to the other world. At that moment, Xiao Se thought that it was very painful. His body did not want to move, but he couldn't die here. Gritting his teeth, the guy rushed to repel her attack. He thought that he had to do something urgently and shouted furiously for her to prepare to die. At that moment, the system reported that the connection to the sword was 100% complete. The setup is complete. Does he want to apply the settings right now? Xiao Se pressed yes. The system reported that the settings were being changed. There was a devastating explosion. Smiling, she said that this little fat guy was like a magician every time. He really had a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Equipment appeared on Xiao Se's body. He rushed to attack the girl. The girl was stunned and didn't understand what had happened. His speed increased. Cursing furiously, she jumped aside to dodge the attack. At that moment, Xiao Se attacked her from behind and shouted with a smirk, "Stupid girl! Where are you looking?" Gritting her teeth in anger, she screamed furiously and crossed her arms to protect herself from the blow. Attacking her, Xiao Se delivered a powerful, crushing blow, knocking her off her feet. She screamed, "What the hell? What the hell happened? How could you become like this?" The guy replied that it was because he had given his life to this sword. In a rage, she shouted that it was nonsense. Now she would make him understand the gap between them. Piercing her with a menacing gaze, Xiao Se replied firmly, "No. Only she will lose here." She yelled at him to stop making a scene. Now he would suffer from the pain. Seiyu asked if she hadn't noticed. She had already lost. After his attack, the sword's energy would spread throughout the area. After all her attacks, it was time for her to feel it for herself. He shouted, "My nirvana." Let her feel all his anger, and he struck. From the powerful blow of the sword, cracks spread across the ground and streams of energy spread out. The shocked girl saw that the ground and walls around her were cracking. Hearing the noise, she turned around and saw with horror that stones were falling behind her. She screamed for him to stop. How about she let him play with her? He could do whatever he wanted with her. Frowning, Xiao Se replied that he was sorry, but he wasn't interested in that. A few moments later, everything around them cracked and began to collapse, raising clouds of dust. Huge chunks of stone from the destroyed walls flew rapidly toward the girl. Soon she was buried under a pile of stone. Throwing his sword over his shoulder, Xiao Se told Yui to wait for him. Soon he would collect 1,000,000,000 points. Opening his eyes, the boy saw the girl in front of him. She told Seiyu to wake up. She looked at the boy in surprise and asked what he was doing there. He said he would fly with her in the new game, and that now, Xiao Se thought, stunned, Yui. Turning away, she told him to forget about it. She was going home. He was no longer the same as before. Turning around, the girl left, saying one last thing, that he had disappointed her. He shouted, "Shi Jiao." At that moment, a huge truck appeared in front of the girl, rushing straight at her. With a furious cry, Xiao Se shouted Yui and jumped up in the blink of an eye. Coming to his senses, he wondered if it was a dream again, and that stupid girl too. At that moment, the phone rang, and Xiao Se thought irritably that it was that guy Wang Bo again. Wang shouted that the new homeroom teacher said that if he didn't come to class again, he would be expelled from school. Angered, Xiao Se shouted, "Can't he stop yelling into the phone? It's easy to get a headache from that." Suddenly, he saw a notification that the player Xiao Se had defeated another player in battle. Excited, Wang Bo asked why he was silent. Xiao Se replied that he should forget about it. He was already on his way to school, so he should meet him there. Wang Bo couldn't believe his ears, and asked again if he was going to school. Putting his phone away, Xiao Se said that he seemed to have gotten lost during the battle. The female students looked at him with smiles, giggling quietly. He didn't understand why. Even a guy, blushing, looked at him with interest. Surprised, Xiao Se couldn't understand why people were looking at him so strangely today. At that moment, he saw his reflection in the elevator mirror and shouted in shock, "What the hell? Was it really him? When did he manage to lose so much weight?" Xiao Se didn't recognize himself in the mirror. At that moment, the system reported that the player's fat was being used as energy in the overload mode of the rough stone sword. Smiling, he thought that what was originally called burning life energy meant this. The system reported that when the life energy burning mode was activated, a huge amount of energy was required, which endangered the player's life. Seeing that all his clothes were ruined, he realized that he couldn't go to school looking like that. The system offered him clothes for points. Deciding that he needed to save his points, he chose the cheapest t-shirt. After changing, Xiao Se finally set off for Eri University. As he walked through the university courtyard, the girl said admiringly that he was such a handsome guy. Who was he? Were there such handsome guys at their school? Xiao Se said how boring. However, he liked being praised. Now he was no longer that fat guy. It was time to get a good understanding of this game again. Otherwise, he might die next time. He took out his phone and asked to see the properties panel. Everything here was like in a real game. He decided that for starters, he needed to pump up useful characteristics that would improve his body. Although his level had increased, he hadn't gained any points. According to that pervert, hostile players destroy each other to get each other's points. So he won her, but didn't destroy her. Fortunately, he wasn't ready for destruction yet. Next, he opened his equipment panel. As he thought, the energy that could be consumed in reboot mode was not only his personal energy. He needed to experiment. At that moment, a basketball rolled to his feet, and the guy asked for it to be passed to him. Taking the ball in his hands, Xiao Se shouted, "Catch!" and swung his arm, throwing the ball. Suddenly, the ball flew over the heads of the stunned players at an incredible speed. Hitting the backboard on which the basket hung, the ball rebounded at a large angle. They were shocked that the ball had broken through the wall. Did anyone see how he did that? It was a guy. I think he ran away. Xiao Se tried to hide as quickly as possible. He himself was amazed. It's only 8 points of strength. That's some power. Soon, he received a notification that the F-rank dungeon would open soon. Turn on the automatic pathfinding function. He was glad he waited and confirmed it. He didn't expect this game to actually have an auto pathfinding function. It's very convenient. The arrow pointed to the women's restroom. He thought irritably, this place again. What is their obsession with this game? He thought he wasn't a pervert. It's just the entrance here. It's all for Yui's resurrection. The guy carefully opened the door and breathed a sigh of relief that no one was there. Looking at the arrow, he couldn't believe that the entrance to the dungeon was a restroom. Opening the door, he was horrified to see a frightened girl sitting on the toilet. Looking at her contorted face, he shuddered inwardly and heard a scream from the pervert. The girl jumped out of the stall and screamed furiously that he was a pervert. How dare he? Trying to calm her down, Xiao Se told her to let him explain. At that moment, a powerful stream of energy flew past him. He barely managed to dodge it. Falling to the floor, the stunned guy tried to understand what was going on. The girl said she had heard that there used to be perverts at school, but she didn't expect to meet one herself. She would castrate him for the safety of the other girls. In any case, she would erase his memory, and he would remember nothing. She asked whether to cut on the left or the right. She held a huge sword in her hands, and her eyes flashed. Sighing, the girl said what a headache. Dodging the blow, Xiao Se shouted for her to stop. It was not what she thought at all. Wielding a huge sword, the girl shouted for him to stop talking nonsense. At that moment, the system informed him that he had encountered another player. Seeing the notification, the girl guessed that he was also a player of the ultimate game. Spinning her deadly weapon, she laughed and shouted, "Excellent," so she didn't have to hold back. A moment later, she delivered a crushing blow. Stunned, Xiao Se realized that this girl was actually a player too. He shouted furiously that when he defeated her, she would tell him everything. She said in surprise that he seemed like a different person. Where did he come from, and did he really want to defeat her? He yelled at her to stop talking nonsense and listen to him. She replied that he should show her his skills. Huge, devastating swords clashed in a fierce confrontation. At that moment, a notification came from the system that the dungeon was now open. Players nearby would be automatically transferred. Feeling himself being pulled inside, Xiao Se shouted, "Why now? Who came up with this scenario?" The girl next to him was also being pulled into the dungeon. Rubbing the bruise spot, Seiyu said, "What kind of unsafe teleportation is this?" The girl cursed him furiously. Angered, the guy rushed at her. The enraged girl jumped up and shouting, "Go to hell!" delivered a powerful blow to him. Looking around, they realized that this was an F-class dungeon called Abandoned City. Surprised, Seiyu said that it was amazing. The dungeon was modeled after their school. They were surrounded by monsters on all sides. Nervous, Xiao Se said that it was the first time he had seen a dungeon filled with monsters. The girl asked if he went to the women's restroom for raids and dungeons. He replied that he had said he was not a pervert. She added that he was a beginner and went to dungeons and was not really afraid of death. He shouted that she was not a beginner. The girl replied that she was a little better than him and had come here to find rare materials. She said that as a newbie, he should study the area and look closely at these monsters. The color of a monster's name represents its danger level. What he sees now should be yellow. The monster exceeds his abilities. In other words, if he clears this dungeon alone, he will be destroyed by a group of monsters within 3 minutes. But for her, these monsters were not dangerous at all, because her level was higher and the color was white. At that moment, the enraged monsters rushed to attack the girl. Growling fiercely, the monsters bared their sharp claws and jumped at her from all sides. Wielding a huge sword, she delivered a crushing blow, scattering them in different directions. The monsters attacked again and again. The girl shouted to activate her skill. In an instant, the entire space flashed with a powerful stream of energy, destroying the bloodthirsty monsters. Watching her, Xiaosei was amazed. He said, "Wow, that's some power." Suddenly, one of the monsters rushed towards the girl from behind. Striking it with a powerful blow, the guy shouted for her to look around. She replied that these monsters couldn't hurt her, and asked what he was doing. Embarrassed, Xiao Yi replied that he just didn't want to see another girl get hurt because of him. She thought that this guy wasn't so bad, but said aloud that he shouldn't expect her to thank him. The girl introduced herself and said her name was Shen Yunyao. He replied that his name was Xiao Yi. Hearing his name, she was surprised and thought what a coincidence. Shen said that he was very weak, so she would help him, and invited him to join the group. He had to agree because he was still a beginner, but Sei really hoped that he would gain experience soon. Smiling, Shen said that he should thank her because she was protecting him. But if she got into trouble because of him, he should be prepared to die. Sei frowned and thought she had a nasty temper. After that, they began to destroy the remaining monsters in the dungeon together. After a while, the system reported that his level had risen to 3. Now he began to understand the game better. With his new level, he felt stronger and decided to pump up his strength. Seeing that the color of the monster's body had changed from yellow to green, Xiaosei realized that he could fight. A few moments later, he rushed into battle against the bloodthirsty monsters, swinging his sword. Soon they reached the boss's lair. Shen warned that they would soon enter, and that he should prepare himself. Suddenly, some kind of slime flew past Xiaosei. Looking at it in bewilderment, he said that slime was disgusting. The girl explained that slugs usually parasitize on monsters' bodies to get nutrients, but they don't have any attack power. He shouldn't waste time on trifles. They needed to go in. Upon entering the boss's lair, they saw a huge monster growling fiercely as they approached. It was a 5th-level bone dragon. Seiyu said it was 9 out of 13, a dangerous monster, just a giant. At that moment, Shen Yunyao told him to just stand still. She would deal with it. Roaring fiercely, the bone dragon released deadly flames in their direction. Moving swiftly, Shen rushed to attack the terrifying monster. Wielding her huge sword, she prepared to deliver a crushing blow. Shouting for it to go to the other world, the girl swung and delivered a deadly blow. The powerful blow split the bloodthirsty monster's body in 2. Impressed, Xiaosei shouted, "Wow, she destroyed it with one blow." When a stream of slugs fell from the ceiling, Shen said that the battle was over and they could leave. Suddenly, Xiaosei shouted for Shen to turn around. There was danger behind her. Not noticing the huge monster behind her, she asked what Seiyu meant. She turned around, but when she noticed the danger, she didn't have time to turn around in time, and was struck. Clicking its huge teeth, the monster growled and moved towards the girl. She cursed furiously, realizing that she could no longer move or attack. The boy screamed in horror when he saw the bloodthirsty monster rush at Shen. To save her, Xiaosei used the reboot mode. Breathing a sigh of relief, he said he barely made it. He asked if she was okay. Shen replied that she couldn't die, but she seemed to be paralyzed and unable to move. This powerful monster was unlike any dungeon boss. The monster moved towards them. She said she had heard that powerful monsters often appeared in dungeons, but she didn't expect to see one here. They were unlucky. But Xiao Yu replied that now was not the time to talk about luck. They just needed to destroy this monster. The girl shouted at him to stop talking nonsense. She was paralyzed, and he couldn't defeat it. Smiling, Xiao replied that if she couldn't move, they would just run away. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. He told her to watch him. Approaching the monster, Xiao shouted for the brainless monster to try to catch him. The monster was furious and rushed in pursuit. As he ran away, the boy shouted for the brainless monster to catch him. Suddenly, Xiao stopped and realized that something was wrong. The monster was not chasing him. At that moment, the monster released a huge stream of deadly fire. Trying to defend himself with his sword, Xiao thought that if it hit him, it would be the end. At that moment, Shen shouted behind him. The huge monster approached to attack. Opening its huge mouth, the monster attacked. To defend himself, Xiao held his sword in front of him. The monster clacked its teeth, and its huge jaws snapped shut. Seiyu barely managed to jump aside. Suddenly, the monster stamped its foot, and the floor cracked from the impact, filling with acid. The stunned boy jumped high into the air to dodge the attack. At that moment, Xiaosei realized with alarm that his organs were damaged. The bloodthirsty monster opened its deadly jaws and growled. Enraged, Sei asked again and rushed at the monster. Striking with his huge sword, he shouted furiously for it to try to eat him. The monster snapped its jaws shut, and Xiaosei jumped aside to avoid being hit. The enraged beast growled menacingly and moved toward the young man. The uneven battle continued. Xiao Se did not give up and struck again. The monster threw him aside. There was a powerful explosion. Everything was covered in smoke and dust. The excited girl screamed at Xiao Se. Lying on the rubble, the wounded Xiao Se cursed furiously. He realized that his body did not want to move. His life force was fading. At that moment, the huge monster spat acid. The guy tried to defend himself with his sword, realizing that he couldn't let the acid hit him. Something had to be done. Suddenly, it dawned on the guy when the monster released the acid. Smiling at his guess, he struggled to lift his sword and said that he thought he knew how to defeat it. The girl screamed for him to be careful. He couldn't withstand another attack. Smiling, he replied that Shen shouldn't worry. It couldn't hit him anymore. As soon as the huge fanged mouth was next to him, Xiao Se struck with his sword. The young man managed to dodge. In an instant, the monster's entire body burst into flame. The monster released a huge stream of acid toward the young man. Xiaoyu shielded himself with his sword. He deftly jumped to the side to dodge the deadly acid. Smiling, Xiao Se said that his guesses were correct. He had guessed right. Standing directly in front of the monster, he asked with a smirk if it still wanted to eat him. He rushed forward and delivered a powerful blow directly to the monster's mouth, shouting that now it was his turn. He delivered a deadly blow to the bloodthirsty monster, which did not have time to dodge. The monster's body burst into flame. Its life force dropped to almost zero. Watching him, Shen couldn't believe that Seiyu was able to damage the monster. Smiling, the guy promised that he would destroy it soon. You just need to inflict damage. Moving with his last ounce of strength, he moved around and struck the monster again and again. Standing directly in front of the terrifying monster, Seiyu said that he was done, and now it was his turn. Shouting furiously, he rushed into the attack, preparing to deliver a deadly blow. Rapidly approaching, he delivered a powerful, crushing blow. Losing its balance, the terrifying beast crashed to the ground with a roar. Stunned, Shen asked how he did it. At his level, it was impossible to keep up with the monster's speed. He smiled and replied that it wasn't that difficult. Although the boss's attack was very strong, it needed distance to attack. And it starts more than 30 meters away from the poisonous attack, followed by a sprint to attack him. At a distance of 10 to 30 meters from him, he will strike the area and then wound him with his claws. At a distance of 10 meters, he launches a continuous claw attack. Although the speed is very fast, as long as his skill can find him, he can attack. This game is very mean, but Xiao Yi is lucky as hell. He's right. The beaten monster lay on the rocks, his eyes flashing fiercely as he breathed heavily. Smiling, Xiao Se rushed into the attack and shouted for it to come here. Now it will go to the other world. He struck again and again. After a couple of hours, Seiyu felt quite tired. But now it will all end. The monster's life force was running out. Suddenly, Xiao Se noticed that the monster's power was growing again. He growled fiercely, and his vitality increased. Seiyu was shocked. The system reported that the boss had entered rage mode, and his power had increased by 10%. They couldn't understand what was happening. Angered, Xiao Yu shouted that as soon as he almost destroyed it, the monster entered rage mode. He promised to destroy it. Suddenly, the guy realized that even the bloodthirsty monster's attack method had changed. Now the monster had two heads with huge teeth. It attacked furiously. The guy said that in his experience, even the fury of monsters has a regular attack. But he has too little blood. He cannot be wrong. The enraged monster swung its sharp-tipped tail furiously and growled menacingly. Frowning, Xiao Se cursed furiously. He realized that the monster was heading towards him. Suddenly, he noticed that the monster had turned around and shouted anxiously to Shen Yunyao. Watching the battle, the girl couldn't understand how this could be. Why was there such a strong boss in an F-rank dungeon? Clutching the wound on her body, she decided that her end had come. The monster was about to destroy her. Stretching out its paws with deadly claws, the monster lunged at the girl. She was already prepared to die and closed her eyes. Seiyu thought that she looked a little like her. Feeling blood splatter on her face, she opened her eyes and was horrified to see that Seiyu had covered her with his body. The wounded Xiao Se smiled and said that he couldn't watch girls like her die in front of him. She looked at the guy in horror. Seiyu thought he wasn't going to give up. He would put his hope in his armor. The system warned him that his heart was damaged. Restart mode activated. Automatic skill activation. Cost: Xiao Se's life energy. The guy screamed. A powerful discharge pierced his wounded body, restoring his strength. The monster's claw couldn't withstand such a load and shattered into pieces, freeing Seiyu's body. The system reported a reboot progress of 28%. A bright flash illuminated the entire space around Seiyu, hiding his body. The girl looked at Seiyu's transformed body with eyes wide with surprise. The system reported a launch of 120%. Standing before her was the updated guy, his eyes flashing fiercely. He looked at the bloodthirsty monster firing deadly balls at him. The monster growled menacingly, baring its fanged jaws. Xiao Se prepared to attack. Gritting his teeth in anger, the guy swung with all his might and delivered a crushing blow. A deadly stream of devastating energy crashed down on the dungeon master. Smiling, Xiao Se said that his sword now had 9,999 damage points. Shen Yunyao looked at him with eyes wide with surprise, wondering how this was possible. The system reported that the hidden dungeon boss had been destroyed. The group leader would receive a reward. The dungeon would close soon. At that moment, the exhausted Xiao Se, having lost the last of his strength, collapsed to the ground with a thud. Slowly coming to his senses, the boy opened his eyes, trying to figure out where he was. Seeing a girl in front of him, he decided it was Yui, and she asked if Seiyu was awake. Grabbing the girl in his arms, he shouted joyfully, "How wonderful! Finally he can see her again." The girl cursed furiously and pushed Xiao Se away from her with force. She shouted that he was the most perverted pervert in the world. She should have left him to die there in the dungeon. Embarrassed, Xiao Yu apologized and said that everything had gone blurry before his eyes, so he was still alive, even though he had almost died. Finally coming to his senses, Xiao Se wondered what had happened. Everything had happened differently. After checking the characteristics, he realized that the level of the sword had increased, and he had also gained a new skill. The description of the reboot mode skill had changed. Frowning, Shen asked what he was muttering about. He replied that it was nothing, and asked what this place was. She replied that it was a hotel. He would pay for the room. She had received 3,000 points and the boss's crystal from the dungeon boss. She had to use all her points to save him, so she would take the crystal for herself. Seiyu didn't object and asked if she had taken his clothes off. Embarrassed, Shen replied that she had no other choice. She was worried about Seiyu and didn't have time for that. His clothes were covered in blood, so she threw them away. She bought him new clothes with her points. Seiyu said he expected to sleep for 5 days. The girl replied that 5 days was nothing. If she hadn't had her glasses, she wouldn't have been able to heal him. She was concerned about the power of his sword. How did he do it? He replied that he realized he was dying. And then there was a flash of light. By then, he was already unconscious. He decided not to mention the Devourer skill. Shen replied that although he was obliged to tell the truth, they had only had a cooperative relationship from the beginning, so maybe he didn't have to tell her. He said when she said that, he felt that something was wrong. Could it be that players had hunted her when she was a beginner? Shocked, Shen asked if they had hunted him. He replied that he had almost died then. The girl grabbed him by the shoulders and shouted for him to quickly open the system map. He asked if it was a city map. Shen replied that it was a game map. She knew he hadn't turned it off. Surprised, Seiyu asked what was wrong with that. It was a useful feature. With it, you could find missions and the entrance to the dungeon. She yelled that she would kill him. If he only had such functions, it would be normal. But this map had a function to show the location of nearby players. He understood what she meant. His location had always been available to other players, although the location was inaccurate. But he had been here for 5 days. Now other players were following him. The player said that the newbie should be nearby. But with so many tasks, it won't be that easy. It was a player nicknamed Scarlet Hawk. He had reached level 8. He told the newbie to wait for him. At that moment, the girl asked her brother to wait for her, and asked if it was definitely here. He replied that the coin would show them the way. The girl replied that they had been wandering around here for a long time. The player nicknamed Eagle was level 5. He assured her that their goal was close. The player Falcon replied, "Okay, I will listen to him and work hard." At that moment, the player Kite was destroying one of the newbies and laughing. He said that destroying these newbies was much more fun than destroying monsters in the dungeon. Looking out the window, Shen said that on that building was a B-level sniper, known here as the Newbie Terminator. Against the backdrop of the night city, a bright light was visible on the building far away from them. Scarlet Hawk realized that the location had disappeared. Apparently, they had been spotted. The girl said that other hunters had probably set up ambushes in other places as well. Seiyu asked why they were hunting other newbies. She explained that newbies who had just started playing the game would mostly choose quests and raids in dungeons. They would earn points and items, but they would have no experience in fighting other players. Therefore, such newbies would be killed, and all their items and points would be dropped. Sometimes newbies would get lucky and survive the battle, so some would kill them for points and items, while others would simply enjoy the destruction. He was amazed that someone could enjoy killing. Shen replied that she was leaving and didn't want him to be caught by those hunters. He saved her life. She saved his life. Now they were even. Good luck to him. But Yu grabbed her hand and said, "Wait." Turning around, Shen asked what he wanted. She wasn't staying with him. Smiling, Xiao said that if she met the hunters, she would have to fight. He had an idea to get out of the trap safely and earn some money. At that moment, Eagle glanced at the map and realized that they had apparently been spotted and the target had disabled the location. Excited, Falcon asked her brother what they should do now. He replied that they just needed to find and destroy the target. Then they would be able to get points and items. Let them search for the target. They must find it. Falcon replied that she understood. At that moment, Xiao Se reported to Shen that he had found 2 hunters and asked what she had. She replied that the sniper was still there. He was still looking for them. Laughing, Xiao Se said that was very good. Then they could begin. Suddenly appearing behind the stunned hunters, he shouted that they weren't looking for him, were they? Eagle shouted that it was their target. His sister should attack him. Frowning, Falcon drew her sword and rushed into the attack, promising that she would try. Seeing the bright glow of powerful energy, Scarlet Hawk realized that they had already been spotted. Apparently, he would have a lot of fun today. Running away from the enemy, Xiao Se asked Shen Yunyao what was going on. He couldn't hold out any longer. She replied that the sniper was in position. Xiao Se had to be careful near the window. He could get hit. Chasing after the guy, Eagle said that he had backed himself into a corner and was pretty tired. Pointing his weapon at him, he told Xiao Se that it was over and fired, barely dodging the deadly bullet flying at him. Xiao Se thought he hadn't expected this. There are such twisted skills in this game. At that moment, Falcon attacked him. Wielding her devastating sword, the girl delivered a powerful blow. Seiyu barely dodged the attack. She stood in front of the guy and told him to forgive them, but they needed his glasses. At that moment, the Scarlet Falcon took aim at the girl and smiled, thinking she was caught. With a cry of goodbye, the novice sniper fired a deadly shot. A powerful shot rang out. The deadly charge rammed into the girl's body. Excited, Eagle shouted, "Sister," and rushed to the wounded girl. Approaching her, he asked if she was all right. The girl replied that she was fine, and said that she had noticed a hunter upstairs. Frowning, Eagle asked, "Accomplice?" It seems that some alliance is using newbies as bait and wants to hunt them. It's a trap. She pointed to the building and said that the sniper was on the roof. Angered, Eagle replied that he would deal with the sniper now. Turning to the building, Eagle shouted furiously, "Does the sniper think he's invisible?" He fired several deadly balls at him with tremendous force. Surprised, Scarlet Hawk wondered what was going on. Was his damage not enough? How could that be? It was strange. At that moment, he saw the destructive balls rapidly approaching him. A few moments later, the balls opened up, and Falcon and Eagle appeared before him. The angry Eagle shouted that people who hurt his sister would regret it. The girl told her brother that she was ready, and rushed to attack the Scarlet Hawk. Seeing the bright flashes of energy on the roof of the building, Xiao Se smiled. The plan had worked after all. Frowning, Shen asked how he had come up with such a crazy plan. Laughing, Seiyu replied that it was better to forget about it. The main thing was that it had worked. He thought about how the plan had succeeded. He had managed to turn the hunters against each other. He would have tried to fight, but his body had not yet recovered. After thinking it over, Xiao Se asked what would happen if they died in this game. She covered his mouth and said that even if they had turned the hunters against each other, it didn't mean there weren't any hunters left in ambush. Suddenly, a stunned Shen heard someone shout, "I'm here!" It was the kite. He asked why such a pretty girl was so wary. Jumping down, he shouted that he would tell the boy everything now. She was stunned, not understanding how she had not noticed him. Smiling maliciously, the kite repeated what would happen after death in this game. The girl said she would deal with it. Transforming into a warrior, she smiled at the hunter and said that he was finished. Jumping up and down and releasing powerful bursts of energy, the kite said that there was supposed to be only one prey. But this was much better. Now he would definitely be able to have some fun. The girl told Seiyu to stay there. She would deal with him. He asked if she could handle it alone. Shen replied that she didn't know. With a shout, she swung her huge sword and attacked her opponent. Smiling maliciously, Corson put his iron-protected leg in front of him and blocked her attack. After blocking her blow, he jumped into the air, swinging his legs to strike. The girl managed to dodge. Excited, Seiyu shouted to ask if she was okay. At that moment, Koshin shouted that she was strong, but still far from his level. The girl replied that judging by his strength, his level should not be higher than hers. Turning around, she told Seiyu that if he couldn't use that sword, this guy was no match for him. Xiao thought she meant that he was finished. Laughing, Koshun shouted that she was underestimating him in vain. Did she really think he would only fight her alone? The two strongest opponents clashed in a devastating confrontation. Suddenly, Koshun parried the attack and rushed to the side, bypassing the girl. Frowning, Shen Yunyao guessed that the opponent was heading for Seiyu. Rapidly approaching Xiao Se, Koshun smiled and said that the boy should forgive him, but he was about to die, and his glasses would help him a lot. Koshun swung his leg in deadly armor. The excited girl screamed in fear at Seiyu. She saw a devastating explosion. The stunned Koshun saw the transformed boy, who said that he was not going to die anytime soon. Gritting his teeth, the boy thought about his wounds. His body had not yet recovered, and his whole body ached. Holding her sword in front of her, Shen Yunyao shouted, "Firestorm." A few moments later, a devastating stream of deadly flames was released from her sword. Enraged, Koshun swung his leg for a striking blow and shouted, "Disappear!" At that moment, Shen's deadly fiery whirlwind approached him. Jumping aside, Koshun sneered and shouted that it was a weak fire. He swung his legs, sending sparks flying, and the ground beneath him cracked and split. Frowning, the girl held her sword in front of her to deflect the devastating attack. There was a powerful explosion. Excited, Xiao Se cried out in fear, "Shen Yunyao!" The girl replied that she was fine. She thought that this guy's attacks were doing a lot of damage. It was dangerous. Smiling, Corson said he had to admit that the two of them were a little strong. Smiling, Shen asked if he wanted to give up. Let him give up before it was too late. Corson smiled and said he didn't like to take risks, but he had already taken a risk, so he wanted to deal with them. She replied that she didn't think he would offer anything beneficial to, so let him give up the points, and they would let him go. The guy smiled and replied that he had another lucrative offer. Would they like to work with him? He wouldn't mind taking her and the newbie onto his team. Both Shen Yunyao and Xiao Se were stunned by this offer and asked in surprise. Corson added that in addition to this, he was offering them to join Blood Moon. The girl said that it was currently one of the top 10 guilds. It was a tempting offer. Smiling, Xiao Se asked if she had decided to sell him to their guild. She replied with a smirk that she would sell him for 300 points. But he had no interest in a guild that hunted newbies. Xiao Se sighed heavily and said that he had already begun to fear that it was true. He thought that the biggest problem right now was this guy. If he helped Shen, they would be able to defeat him, but he must not interfere. They had to defeat him at all costs. He would protect Shen Yunyao and not let him hurt her. He stood next to the girl. Shen told him to be careful. This guy was not so simple. Smiling, Koshun said that in this game, as soon as he died, all his points and everything he had would disappear. Gripping her sword tightly, Shen Yunyao shouted for him to finally shut up and rushed into the attack. Suddenly, she noticed pink threads and wondered what they were. He didn't have that ability. At that moment, she was stunned to see a wall opening up behind her. A moment later, deadly rays were released from it. Shen barely managed to jump out of the way. Korshin flew at her with a smirk. He shouted that he was giving the girl a chance. Suddenly, Seiyu's powerful sword appeared in the path of his deadly boot. He asked if he had forgotten about it. Korshin retreated, and Seiyu asked if Shen was all right. She replied that she was fine. But where did these threads come from? At that moment, a hooded man appeared from the hole in the wall. He said to stop playing with them. Let him destroy them already. Smiling, Kormush said it was the perfect time to come out of the shadows. The hooded man replied that he had to finish the fight. Breathing heavily and frowning, Xiao Shen asked who he was. Looking back, Shen thought that these threads were everywhere. The retreat route was completely blocked. She told Xiao Se that these two were very strong. They would not be able to defeat them. He replied that she should be careful with the hooded man. It was not yet clear who this player was. Laughing, Kashan asked if they still thought they had a chance. The hooded man repeated that Kashan should finally destroy them. Saying okay, Kashan decided to use this. With incredible speed, he flew into the air. Spinning rapidly in the air, Kormush turned into a frantically spinning wheel. The girl held her sword in front of her, wondering if he wanted to use Nirvana to win. No, his target was Seiyu. At that moment, Shen excitedly thought that she was already close to this thread. At that moment, Seiyu swung his sword to attack and help Shen. A hooded man who suddenly appeared from the wall shouted, "Don't interfere," and released a stream of energy. Stunned, Xiao Se realized he was trapped. An unknown energy surrounded him. Angry, he cursed fiercely and shouted to Shen that he couldn't move. Frowning, Shen said that she would have to rely on her own strength anyway. She confronted the kestrel and thought that this trick was useless against her. At one point, the hunter couldn't take it anymore and flew to the side. Flames burst forth. A huge stream of deadly flames raged next to the girl. Standing in front of the falcon to prevent him from falling, the hooded guy said that she was strong. The falcon confirmed that they had underestimated her, but her HP and mana were running out. Soon, her strength would be depleted, and she would be unable to resist. Looking at Seiyu, Shen said that if she didn't have any tricks up her sleeve, it would be the end for both of them. Gritting his teeth in anger, Seiyu thought about what to do. Using his life force for attacks was dangerous, and he was unlikely to last long. At that moment, he realized that he could use more than just his life force. He shouted at Shen to lend him something. The girl asked in surprise, "Lend you something?" Korshin laughed that until now, whether it was clearing dungeons or hunting newbies, he had always sought out enemies weaker than himself. In such a battle, the chance of victory was almost 100%. Even when he fought them, they were right not to agree to work with him. After all, the Shadow Destroyer was waiting for them all the time, waiting for them to hesitate. But he had to admit that even though they were newbies at this game, they were pretty good, but they would still die by his hands, because even today, his chance of victory was almost 100%. Smiling, Sei asked, "Almost 100? Car accidents, illnesses, earthquakes, accidents. Life is never perfect. Almost 100% is not much. Even 1/100% is hope for victory. All he can do is attack from behind and pretend to be tough." Angered, Corson replied that he had not even experienced all the difficulties of this game, and dared to say such things. Once he was on the verge of death, but God gave him the opportunity to live. This time, his life had to be 100%. Corson rushed into the attack. He remembered how, once, sitting in a wheelchair, he saw students rejoicing over their grades. There are people who live 100%, but he lived only 50%. He was not happy with grades equal to 100. When he was a child, he injured his legs in an accident and became disabled. But he didn't give up. Every day he trained his weak body. But even so, in this world, people like him are not treated fairly. They told him there was no point in reading, or that he would not be able to do their work. Everyone refused to give him a job because he was disabled and useless. Regardless of how unfair this world was, his own calculations still led him step by step to success. He lived at 90% capacity, using 50% of his body, but he still felt like a nobody. Until the game appeared. The system congratulated him on being selected as a player for the final game, and asked if he wanted to become a player. Then, delighted, Corson decided that his life would be filled to 100%. This time, he would not allow himself to waste even a minute of his life. That was his only hope. At that moment, Xiao Se realized that if he was not mistaken, it was a devourer. Clutching the crystal tightly, he decided that he needed to activate the F-class energy poison absorption skill. Using the reboot mode, he absorbed the energy core and activated it. The stunned girl thought that they had obtained this core in the dungeon. This guy really did it. The guy thought that the Devourer was an incredible skill, and he felt incredible power throughout his body. At that moment, the Shadow Destroyer told him that something was wrong and that Koshin had better stop. He replied that he would not let anyone tell him how to live. His trick would not save him from destruction. Seiyu said, "Activate sword deformation." He shouted, "It seems the hunter thinks he will win. But let him tell him the truth. In this world, nothing is 100% certain." In an instant, he delivered a powerful crushing blow, knocking the hunter down. Enraged, Koshin shouted for him to go to the other world. The two energies collided in confrontation. The collision of the two deadly energies caused the powerful explosion that destroyed everything around them. Trying to see anything in the clouds of smoke, Shen asked excitedly if the guy was okay. The surprised Shadow Destroyer said that this newcomer was very strong. Where did he get such power? Looking at the exhausted Xiao Se, Koshin said with a smirk that he had won. Without getting up from the ground, Xiao Si asked if the hunter was sure he had won. Koshin's body flashed. He shouted, "How was that possible? He never fails. He lives life to the fullest." Soon, only blue smoke remained. Xiao Se said that he used to be so cautious that he hurt the people who were important to him. But this game gave him a second chance. So in the future, even if his chance of winning was only 1%, he would bet everything he had on it. The shocked Shadow Destroyer couldn't believe that Kong Xing had lost. Smiling, Shen Yunyao happily shouted to the guy that he was great. It was incredible that even with such injuries, he was able to win. She patted him on the shoulder. He replied that she shouldn't hit him. The destroyer was still there. He had to hold on a little longer. The stunned Shadow Destroyer couldn't understand how this newcomer had managed to defeat him. Where did he get such strength? He could barely stand on his feet. Should he shoot him? Smiling at him, Xiao Se asked if he was still going to fight. After thinking for a moment, the Shadow Destroyer disappeared into thin air, saying that this was a meaningless battle. When there was no trace of him left, Shen said that it looked like the guy had left. Seiyu was amazed that the building had been restored, and the field had disappeared. Throwing down his sword and falling to the ground, he said happily that it was finally over, all thanks to the energy crystal that had fallen from that boss. The system reported that he had destroyed the player and received his items and points. Delighted, Xiao Se shouted, "Wow, valuable resources." He reached out to open the box. A huge number of items fell out of it. Xiao Se said, "These are treasures. Such a small box, but it contains so many things. How wonderful. These things are very valuable." The girl said that he had to give her 10 times more points, or some of the equipment in exchange for the points and items he had received. The stunned guy replied that he had almost died and owed her 10 times more points. She replied that if it weren't for her, he would have died long ago. He replied that he understood that he had borrowed a valuable item, but why such a high interest rate? Without further argument, Seiyu gave her 1,700 points. He thought regretfully that if converted into money, it would be 1,700,000. After thinking about it, Seiyu decided that he could buy points. After numerous battles, he thinks it's better to change his attitude towards points. He doesn't play this game at all. Only by becoming stronger will he be able to get closer to his goal of 100 million points. Shen replied that of course he could, but at his current level, he could only buy 1,000 points. The more you buy, the more expensive it is. There is no price for a beginner player at all. Only a player with a large number of points would dare to play like this. This is a free game in which players do whatever they want. Therefore, they will need time to learn how to play correctly here. For example, she is now thinking of spending points on things that will help in such extreme situations, but he has the right to choose. He can choose his own path. Shen said that now everything is divided. Xie Yu asked again, "Divided? Great. This guy has very valuable equipment." Suddenly, he asked if she had made a mistake. She took everything valuable for herself. Shen replied that she had divided everything correctly. Angry, Seiyu shouted why the old and broken items were on his side. And what was that roll of toilet paper? She replied that he should stop shouting. She didn't take everything for herself. He still owed her. Seiyu said that Shen was a creature from hell. Hiding the items, she asked who told him that after winning, he could take all the things for himself. She almost died, but in the end, it was he who destroyed it. So here's a small gift for him. Now he could be grateful to her and go home. Looking at the bottle, he asked what the hell it was. The system reported that it was a ghost potion. After use, the player's heart would stop beating within 30 minutes. He asked what kind of ghost potion it was. Did he really just have to drink it and die? And where was he anyway? How could he get home? He didn't even have anyone to call. Even though he had defeated that guy, all he got was a bunch of useless junk. What kind of junk was this? He could get a stone 100 times better than this in the dungeon. Clutching his head, Xiao Se thought despondently about why this had happened. Out of frustration, he slammed the stone in his hand onto the ground. Unexpectedly, the stone lit up and began to split into pieces. Xiao Se was surprised. The system announced that the player had obtained a rare item. He could add it to his inventory. He was glad that he had gotten a rare item after all. It looked like an egg. Did he have to take a certain number of steps for it to hatch? Or would it be better to put it in an incubator? First, he needed to go home and try it out. Hooray! He didn't lose the rare item. Waking up in the morning, Seiyu examined the egg. After a night's rest, he had largely recovered from those battles. It was time to sort through his inventory. Opening the status window, he saw that he had earned 3,400 points by defeating the kite. Shen Yunyao took half of. From all the battles that had taken place before, he was able to raise his level 3 times, but it was still better to avoid battle. Where should he risk his life? In addition to strength, he most likely needed to invest points in dexterity, as well as in the egg. Opening the inventory, Seiyu read that it was a fire egg. When the moon runs away from its presence, a candle lights up inside. He decided that this egg needed some kind of special way to be brought out. He decided to leave it alone for now. Next, Seiyu decided to check the characteristics of this common equipment. His weapon was pink. It seemed that this game rated its weapons the same way as most games: gray, white, green, blue, pink, orange. Well, he already knew everything he needed to know. Maybe he should sell it all. Although this junk probably wouldn't bring him much money, it was worth selling anyway. Selling the item earned him 1 point. He thought that was to be expected, but it's better than nothing. Seeing the green color, Seiyu decided it was a good chance to check what disassembly does. He clicked on disassemble and was surprised. What happened to his armor? Does that mean... He decided to move it here and see what happens. At that moment, the system reported that an item that could be absorbed had been found. He received a new item, a devouring protective glove. The guy was pleased that this set of armor had actually managed to gain even more skills. He decided it was worth hurrying up and feeding the rest of the equipment into the armor. As long as the equipment has additional attributes, his devouring armor can absorb them and gain bonus attributes. He must find a way to get even more junk equipment with additional stats. After all, junk equipment is quite cheap. Until he gets enough, his equipment will be powerful. This game probably has a market. He needs to ask around to find out where it is. But first, he needs more points. This game probably has a market. He needs to ask around to find out where it is. But first, he needs more points. These tasks don't pay much, but they are relatively safe to complete. The system wrote that he should go to school to get points. Deciding to complete the system's task, Xiao Se went to Ruhong College. Who would have thought that he would end up returning to college? Seeing a familiar guy in front of him, Xiao Se smiled, thinking that this idiot hadn't changed. He rushed towards Wang Bo and shouted that it was strange to meet him here again. This guy's name is Wang Bo. He met him while playing a video game. He would never have thought that they would study at the same college. Now he is his best friend. Wang Bo asked who he was. Xiao Se wondered if he really didn't recognize him, but he doesn't blame him. He never expected him to become so stylish and handsome. The guy said in surprise that it was a pretentious-sounding voice. Just don't tell him. Could it really be Seiyu himself? Xiao Se replied that he should stop shouting. They went into the dining room, and Seiyu served himself a variety of food. Wang Bo said that Seiyu had promised to return to school, but he couldn't find him anywhere. Seiyu didn't even answer his phone. Seiyu replied that he had an emergency that day, but he was glad that Seiyu had decided to return. How did he suddenly lose so much weight? He replied that he had started eating less meat and more vegetables. At that moment, they heard beautiful singing. He asked what that voice was. Wang Bo replied that he wasn't there when the singer appeared at school. Not only the students, but also the teachers love her. Listening, Seiyu thought it was definitely amazing. But why did her voice sound so familiar? Smiling, Wang Bo asked if he wanted to meet her. Seiyu was surprised that he knew her. His friend saw him off and told the class monitor that he had brought the student Seiyu she had asked about earlier. The girl asked if this was Mr. Seiyu. Shocked, the guy couldn't understand how this could have happened. "Isn't that Shen Yunyao?" The girl said. "Welcome back to school." But the way she was dressed, the way she looked so delicate, and this place, it was really her. Clutching his head, Xiao Se shouted furiously that something was wrong with this world. Wang Bo told them not to forget that they promised to erase the attendance records. If he brought Xiao Yu, he would run away. Shocked, Xiao Se shouted that he had sold him out. The girl said that it was quite difficult to try to meet him. Laughing, he asked if she was the new class leader. He was curious why she always prevented him from going to school. It seemed to be a game assignment. Now he couldn't help her and would go to class. Pushing him, Shen asked if he was going to avoid her. He replied that it would never cross his mind. Of course, he thought about it. Every time he saw her, nothing good happened. Shen said that she had sold Koga's equipment earlier, and here was his share. The surprised guy received 5,000 points from her, and decided that he could buy a lot of weak weapons. The guy smiled and thought about this girl. It seemed that he had really underestimated her. She asked why he was looking at her like that. He shouldn't misunderstand her. Those points should have been his anyway. She couldn't admit that she had been excited yesterday, and had taken all the good loot. It was too embarrassing. He asked where she had sold it. The girl said she had an acquaintance who had bought everything. There is a market. It appears every Saturday on Bushin Street. Shay thought that people like Shen, who deal in first-class weapons, don't have the kind of material he needs. He'll have to go to the market. Showing Seiyu her phone, Shen asked if he had heard the news. Pang Kong Shin, a famous disabled architect, died in his home last night. The investigation believes it was suicide. The reason is unknown. The guy was in shock. Shen confirmed that it was the same Kong Shin he had destroyed on Friday. Stunned, Seiyu asked why investigators believed it was suicide. She said that when you die in the game, you die in real life. However, the way the game kills people is very strange. Most of the victims will look like they committed suicide, which guarantees no suspicion. Sighing, Seiyu admitted that after his first attempt at destruction, he thought about it a lot. The rewards offered by the game are amazing. It is logical that the stakes are life. But he does not want to ultimately hurt others. He wants to do everything as he sees fit. However, if someone targets him, then he will definitely respond in kind. Smiling, Shen replied that she thought he wouldn't be able to handle the shock of this news. That's why she wanted to comfort him, but he didn't seem to need it. Was he interested in teaming up with her later? She knew a couple of low-level dungeons. That would help him level up. But Seiyu refused. If a player can't even remember what the game map looks like, he's playing like an idiot. In a game where life is at stake, playing like that will get you killed. Returning home, Se-yu decided he had 4 days until the Saturday market. He needed to hurry up and complete as many quests as possible. The system gave him a new quest to clear the E-ranked dungeon, Ghost Hospital. 600 points. 550 experience points. Deciding that this was just in time, he asked Yui to wait a little longer. He would definitely resurrect. Setting off on his quest, Se-yu thought that it was hard to believe that just a few days ago, he had weighed 200 kilograms. Now he moved easily, jumping over 2-meter-high walls. As he approached, he noticed with surprise that the entrance to the dungeon seemed to be already open. Entering, he thought about how he didn't know what this dungeon would be like. Seeing the scene that opened up before him, Xiao Se said that this place looked terrible. The system reported that this was a rank E dungeon called the Ghost Hospital. He asked the skeleton at the entrance if he thought there was anything on the market that could shut his big fat mouth. It was unclear whether this giant was dead, but his exit was already closed. At that moment, he noticed an entrance on the side. The guy thought for a moment. There are 2 paths. Which one is the right one, and which one is a trap? Or maybe they are both important. Well, if that's the case, then it doesn't matter which door he entered. Se-yu entered the door on the side. Seeing a long corridor with falling debris, he thought it should have scared him, but it had no effect on him. Soon, terrifying monsters in medical clothing stood in his way. He screamed in horror. What the hell? But he decided he needed to calm down. Usually, the first monsters you see aren't that strong. The guy decided that this was perfect for him to test his strength after leveling up. After assessing the strength of these monsters, he had no doubts that he could clear the dungeon. But when he fought Shen Yun Yao in the dungeon, he couldn't do anything. Does this mean that the strength of monsters changes depending on the strength of the player? Then what is the point of the dungeon's system ranks? Maybe it's the overall difficulty of the dungeon. The difficulty of these monsters is sufficient, so that he can calmly practice his combat experience and skill. Even if the points can make his body stronger, without practice, they are useless in battle. He also cannot rely too much on the reboot mode. Although it is very powerful, frequent use can cause him great damage. Moving rapidly, Xiao Se dealt deadly blows to the monsters, destroying them. After destroying them all, he said with a smile that it seemed his body had already gotten used to the new characteristics. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, the guy saw the ghost of a girl in the hallway. He shouted, "Who's there?" No one answered him. Xiao Se wondered why this ghostly figure looked so much like Yui. He tried to catch up with her and shouted for her to stop immediately. But the ghost ignored his cries and turned into one of the rooms of the ghost hospital. He rushed after her and almost got hit on the head by a huge brick. At that moment, Se-yu wondered what he was doing. Why was Yui here? She was no longer alive. Besides, she would never appear in a place like this. As far as he could remember, he had always known Lin Yui. They had grown up together. As they grew older, she became more and more beautiful. To other people, Yui was a model student and a respected person. However, she had a side to her that only he knew about. They played computer games together. He thought they would always be best friends. But the girls didn't understand how she could be friends with a fat, ugly guy who played video games. Over time, he even began to believe that he was unworthy of being her friend. He said he planned to make photocopies with other people, but they could play together another time. She asked him to let her know when Se-yu was free. But the next time never came. The guy decided that now was not the time to be sad. As long as he continues to get stronger and earn more points, he knows for sure that he will see her again. The next time will definitely come. Seeing a glowing object ahead, he said he didn't think he would be so lucky. This burning thing in the skeleton's hand was probably quite a valuable item. Although, as for the monsters in these beds, wasn't it obvious that as soon as he took the artifact, they would all attack him? Smiling, he asked if he really thought he could fool him with that. But he wasn't going to just sit there and let them ambush him. Whoever made the first move would win. He wanted to strike, but the system informed him that he couldn't attack it. Se-yu was surprised that there were restrictions on this. Looking around, he saw hanging wires and said, did he really think that just by forbidding attacks, he would be safe? After tying up the body, Se-yu shook his hands and happily said that it was all over. Approaching the skeleton, the guy decided that now he could take it from his hand. But as soon as he touched the burning heart, the body under the sheet stirred. The enraged monster jumped up on the bed and growled fiercely, trying to stand up. He was held back by the wires, and Se-yu told him to stop screaming. Even if he screamed, he still wouldn't be able to get up. The monsters tried to stand up and screamed furiously. Se-yu said that he had already received his certificate, but he could see how much they were suffering now. Swinging his sword, Se-yu said with a smirk that he would simply put them out of their misery. The guy earned points by destroying monsters. He happily said that it was a pleasant way to gain experience points. At that moment, the system announced that the player had earned a new title. "You're crazy, bro," Se-yu said. "Is he kidding me?" He decided it would be better not to use it in the dungeon. Besides, he didn't want to attract attention to himself. At that time, Shen Yunyao came home, undressed, and went into the bathroom. She wondered what the guy was doing now. Embarrassed, she wondered why she was thinking about him now. He dared to refuse her offer. He'd better die. Meanwhile, Xiao Se was fighting fiercely against bloodthirsty monsters in the dungeon. After destroying one of the monsters, the guy thought that he was almost used to fighting. After obtaining a blood crystal, he decided that this was probably the second artifact he needed. Now all he had to do was find the boss to finally clear out this dungeon. Suddenly, Xiao Se noticed the ghost of a girl in the corridor out of the corner of his eye again. He noted that, as usual, she looked exactly like the deceased Yui. Angered, he turned to the ghost and shouted furiously, asking if she really wanted to die. Who the hell was she, and why did she look like that? Seiyu smashed through walls in pursuit of the ghost. Suddenly, two bloodthirsty monsters jumped out in front of him. Furiously swinging his sword, he destroyed the monsters, shouting for them to get out of his way. At that moment, new monsters appeared in front of him. He thought with annoyance that this bunch of monsters had decided to appear right now. Stabbing his sword into the ground, Seiyu shouted that he would take care of them all at once. A moment later, a powerful stream of deadly energy flew from the stuck sword. Suddenly stunned, Xiao Se realized that the floor beneath his feet was beginning to crack at the seams. Falling rapidly downward, he realized that there was another floor below him. After falling down, Seiyu coughed and thought that this dungeon was bigger than it seemed. There was an entrance here too. Frowning, he decided that this ghost had deliberately led him here. He read the underworld. It was an interesting place where only the dead could enter. Could it be that the ghost brought him here because it wanted him to go inside? Making up his mind, Xiao Se went to the entrance to see what was inside. He was stunned to see a cave. How could a cave suddenly appear in the basement of a ghost hospital? Moreover, the monsters around him were different from those outside. Something was wrong here. Suddenly, Xiao Se noticed that one of the monsters was rapidly approaching him. He shouted that he would see how strong it was. In an instant, he swung his sword, preventing the ghost's attack, but his sword passed freely without harming the monster. Xiao Se was stunned to realize that his attacks were ineffective. At that moment, the ghost swung a huge ghostly axe. The monster's crushing blow immediately reduced the guy's HP. He was stunned. The ghost surrounded the guy, but he knew he couldn't fight. He had half his HP left. He wouldn't be able to withstand even one blow. Turning around, running back, Seiyu exhaled and wondered if the monsters in the underworld were attacking him just because he was alive. But why would the underworld create a place where only the dead could enter? And how could undead creatures experience feelings? At that moment, it dawned on him that he had an elixir. Maybe he could use it. Taking out the turtle healing water, he said that if he was not mistaken, they could destroy him as soon as he entered. Deciding to use the elixir, he drank the contents of the vial in one gulp. His stats began to drop. He thought that the medicine was so strong that he not only felt weak, but also had difficulty moving. Now he understands how elderly people feel. Taking a step, he feels like he is wasting half of his energy. Excited, Seiyu noticed that the ghosts were approaching. He hoped that the medicine would work. Covering his face with his hand, he repeated to himself that they should not look at him. The monsters left. He thought that, as expected, they would not be able to detect him now, as his heartbeat had almost stopped. Crossing to the other side of the stone bridge, Seiyu exhaled. He had finally made it. It had taken him a long time. That brat had better be nearby. The boy was very surprised to see the fountain. He had run with such difficulty, but Yui was already gone. He hadn't even gotten anything, but at least he could take a sip of water. Reaching out his hand to the fountain, he thought about this feeling. It was so warm here. Could it be that his HP had been restored? This was the elixir of life. He was no longer in danger of dying. Great. He could also get rid of the effects of the turtle's healing water. The exit was at the end anyway. There shouldn't be any more monsters there. Standing under the fountain, he closed his eyes. Suddenly, Seiyu heard a voice calling his name. He was shocked. It was Yui. He asked in astonishment if it was really her. Yui replied that he knew how long she had been waiting for him. Reaching out to touch the girl, Seiyu said in astonishment, "It's her." The girl stepped back and told him not to touch her. Seiyu asked why. Looking at him reproachfully, the girl asked why he had done that to her. He looked at her in shock. Yui repeated, "Are you really not going to answer?" If he hadn't rejected her proposal that day, the car accident wouldn't have happened, and she wouldn't have experienced unbearable pain for 30 minutes. The one who destroyed her was Seiyu. He remembered how Yui told him, showing him a store on her phone, that they had the best cakes there, and suggested they go there after school. She asked why Seiyu looked so upset. Why don't they go play at the arcade? She'll show him her skills. Grabbing his hand, Yui said she had him. He had to go with her no matter what. The guy thought that his inadequacy and weakness had caused him to reject her so many times. He had been a good childhood friend, but it was true. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have died. Even the doctor said that there was a chance she would survive if she was taken to the hospital in time. He destroyed her. Looking at the guy who had fallen to his knees, Yui said she would never forgive him for his mistakes. Reaching out to him, the girl said that in return, he had to give her his soul. Memories of the times they spent together flashed through Seiyu's mind, and when, considering himself unworthy, he rejected her communication. And then he cried over the photo. He asked her to forgive him. He used to be weak, ignorant, and scared. He didn't even have the courage to meet her face to face. If only he had been a little braver back then. But in this world, there are no ifs, and he doesn't need any either, because he has a chance to see her again. If he gave her his soul, it might be a way to atone for his guilt, but it would be an escape. This time, he wouldn't run away. He would become strong and earn points. Until he saw her again, he would atone for this sin himself. She agreed. The girl replied, "Okay," and began to slowly dissolve into the air with a smile on her face. In a few moments, there was nothing left of Yui. Seiyu stretched out his hands, but there was only emptiness. Suddenly, he saw a flash of light in front of him. The system reported that the hidden task was complete. He realized that this was only part of the underground city. The damn developers who created these disgusting scenes should give him back his tears. Suddenly, Xiao Sei noticed that the fountain was glowing and decided that there might be an item there. The system reported that he had found the suppressed statue of the goddess. He thought that from this description, the item didn't look that valuable. Seeing that something was glowing again, Seiyu decided it was time to leave. He wasn't ready to see it again. Judging by the map, he had been everywhere in the underground city. Where should he go now? At that moment, he remembered the strange door that was blocked by a skeleton. Going upstairs, he thought that, based on his experience, if he placed the two artifacts he had found in the right place, this would wake up the dungeon boss. After inserting the heart, Seiyu took out the crystal. At that moment, the skeleton's body flashed with a bright red light. It began to move. Covering his face with his hand, Xiao Sei thought that, as expected, it was moving. The skeleton screamed furiously and began to destroy the strong chains holding it. The system reported a danger. The boss of the underground city, Class E, the Morning Knight, appeared. Skeleton. Feeling the pressure, Seiyu smiled and thought that it would be a difficult battle. Unexpectedly, the skeleton said, "Unauthorized person." Seiyu was surprised that it was talking. Fiercely flashing his eyes, the monster asked if he was here to fight him. Looking at the monster, Xiao Sei asked if he was here to fight him. At that moment, it dawned on the guy that the knight had faith. Maybe this thing. He took out the statue of the goddess. Deciding it was worth a try, he threw the statue of the goddess at the skeleton. In an instant, the skeleton caught the thrown statue and clutched it in his hand. The monster said that this object was the cause of his grief. It had been forcibly taken from him, and he was able to get it back. He restored his faith in humanity. Seiyu shouted that he had returned his item, but he still wanted to fight him. The skeleton promised to show him the way forward. Seiyu replied that maybe they should both stop talking and just take a deep breath. The skeleton's body burst into bright flames. At that moment, the system reported that the underground boss had disappeared. He had found the leader of the underground city. Stunned, Seiyu realized that this was the hidden boss. He thought that the hidden quest was to find the hidden boss. He peered into the darkness, waiting for the smoke to clear and the hidden boss to appear. At that moment, in a crack in the wall, the shocked guy saw Yui's ghost. The guy guessed that was it. He created an illusion to bring him here. He said he didn't know what his goal was, or what kind of hidden boss he was, but how dare he use Yui to play with him? He would die. Entering inside, Seiyu swung his sword and shouted for the one hiding behind to come out immediately. The girl's body began to be bound by chains. Angered, Seiyu thought he needed to stay calm. In fact, it wasn't Yui. It was just a trick to provoke him. He wanted to reach out to the chain, but at that moment, the system warned of danger. The boss of the hidden F-rank dungeon appeared. It was a witch hunting souls. The witch looked at Seiyu with a smirk. He realized that this was an enemy that could fly. It would be difficult for him, since he couldn't use long-range attacks. He had to try. He decided to use the reload mode and activated it. A powerful stream of crushing energy bounced off the wall and flew at the monster. The guy tried to get around her and attack from behind, rushing closer. Smiling, The witch swung a huge axe and unleashed demonic powers on the guy. Huge ghostly heads with empty eye sockets rushed at the guy. Swinging his huge sword with all his might, Seiyu shouted furiously to get out of the way. He tried to fight off the ghostly heads, but they attacked him from all sides. With sharp fangs, they attacked Xiao Se, trying to knock him off his feet. The witch watched the battle from above. Looking at Xiao Se, he thought that flying bosses who used magic were usually bad at close combat. But if he had such incredible speed, how could he get close to him? The witch smiled. Another weak opponent. This is quite boring. She thought he was lucky to have found the secret dungeon. He thinks that as long as he can defeat the boss, he will receive even more rewards. Unfortunately, he is just another sad soul who has fallen into her bedroom. Stunned, Seiyu realized that this was a boss who was aware of his actions, as he thought he had lured him here. Releasing more and more ghosts, the witch laughed and said that he was a poor little man. Before she took his soul, she would let him torment him a little. Seeing the ghosts fall and hit the rocks, Seiyu realized that the attack was not aimed directly at him. A moment later, Xiao Se saw a monster's hand break through the stone bridge. He asked in shock how she could summon an entire army of spirits. Gritting his teeth in anger, Seiyu thought that now it would be even more difficult for him to get closer. A crowd of terrifying skeletons with glowing eyes rushed to attack the young man. Clutching his sword tightly, Seiyu realized that he had to attack immediately, otherwise he would be doomed. Smashing the skeletons to smithereens, he thought furiously that he couldn't waste his energy on this trifle. He swung his sword furiously, but suddenly his sword collided with a huge monster. Parrying the attack, the monster dealt the guy a powerful blow, and he flew to the side. Flying across the floor, Seiyu crashed into the wall with a bang, raising a cloud of dust. He thought furiously that this minion was able to block the attack he had launched during the reboot mode. Besides, judging by the equipment he had, could it be that this equipment belonged to some player? Could their souls have been captured by the boss? If he used his reboot mode and wasted energy fighting them, it would be the end of him. Now it was do or die. Frowning, he furiously shouted, "Reboot mode. Activation. 10%. In an instant, a powerful stream of devastating energy flew toward the monsters. There was a powerful explosion. The skeletons were engulfed in flames and destroyed. The witch jumped aside and smiled. He used one attack and destroyed her entire ghost army. Releasing more monsters, the witch said that she still had many spirits stored inside her braid. The guy thought that based on his current strength and physical condition, he would be able to use an attack of this magnitude again. But if he had to use it on another wave of enemies, he would no longer be able to fight the boss. Would he really die here? Releasing new ghosts, the witch laughed and told him to let her use his spirits on people. Closing his eyes, Seiyu thought he needed to calm down. If Shen Yunyao saw him like this, she would laugh herself silly. On top of that, Yui was also waiting for him. How could he even think about defeat? As long as it was a game, he would never lose. If he was destined to die another day, then he had to try. With a wave of her scythe, the witch released the ghosts and shouted for her slaves to come to her. Gritting his teeth, Seiyu used an intense 10% overload. Looking at the approaching ghosts, the boy realized that they had come from the other side. Holding his sword in front of him, he shouted furiously, releasing a burst of energy. A powerful flash of devastating energy destroyed the approaching ghosts. The witch said that he had destroyed her spirits to pieces before they reached the ground. Impressive, though. Looking at the exhausted boy, she said that it seemed he had reached his limit before she had taken a step. Had he fought enough? How about preparing for death? Since he had entertained her, she would be gentler with him. Smiling, Seiyu replied, "Who said he would lose? The real game had just begun." He activated the Devourer's absorption mode and said that the souls of the dead were in pain. The witch looked at the guy in shock, not understanding what was happening. The guy shouted furiously, "Then become my power. Absorb the souls." The system reported that a huge flow of energy had been detected. Seiyu thought he knew that. Souls are also a type of energy. The system reported that the energy had exceeded the limit. The player must prepare to enter overload mode. He said he could hear it, and he could feel the suffering and sorrow of the souls she had tormented. They begged him to fight her. He shouted at the witch, "Wake up! She is a monster who plays with souls." The shape of his sword changed. New skills appeared in his mind. It felt like he had always known how to use them. His body was filled with energy, and 5% overload mode was no problem for him. The power of these souls was amazing. The witch asked if he had such power. He replied that now they would see. Would she be able to speak with such arrogance after he knocked all the crap out of her? The witch tried to fend off Seiyu's attack. She was amazed by his speed. He attacked her fiercely, delivering crushing blows. Streams of energy surrounded the witch. She defended herself fiercely, swinging her huge scythe. Her face was contorted with malice. A few moments later, there was a powerful explosion, and everything was covered in smoke. Seiyu wondered if it had worked. The witch screamed that she couldn't believe that someone could actually hurt her. She would let him witness her true power. The witch screamed for her captives to transform into her power. But suddenly, the scythe thrown by the witch returned and struck her with a powerful blow. A moment later, there was a devastating explosion. A bright flash illuminated everything around. The witch was transformed. The system reported that this was the indestructible form of a vengeful, fallen angel. Frowning, the guy thought that her appearance had changed. Even her HP had been restored. Frowning, the enraged witch approached the stunned guy. Smirking at him, she swung her huge sword-like arms, knocking Seiyu off his feet. The powerful blow knocked the guy off balance and sent him flying far to the side. Struggling to his feet, he thought angrily that her speed and strength had increased significantly after her evolution. The witch smiled and said that he had forced her to use this form. He was truly worthy of praise. Putting her hand out in front of her, she said that this was the end and ordered the skeletons to detain him. Suddenly, Seiyu saw the skeleton's hands reaching out to him from all sides. Smiling, the witch shouted that his soul now belonged to her. He could relax. The guy realized that this was a frontal attack and that he couldn't escape. Was this really the end? But why was he still smiling? That's right, because he was a gamer. As a gamer, what could be more exciting than finding himself in a hopeless situation and instantly switch roles? He shouted that she thought she had paralyzed him, but it was she who couldn't move. He had only one chance to use this attack, and he had been waiting for such an opportunity. At that moment, swinging with all his might, Zhao Se threw his sword at her. Two devastating energies collided in a deadly confrontation. Enraged, Zhao Se shouted for him to destroy it, and his sword pierced through the witch's energy dome. The bloodthirsty witch's body began to dissolve. Zhao Se shouted joyfully that he had won. The witch said she knew it. From the moment he entered the underground city, she had predicted it. It was only him, the one who could truly free her soul. Thank you to him. The system announced that it was a successful victory over the boss of the underground city. The rewards will be automatically transferred to the inventory. Exhaling heavily, Seiyu was glad that it was over. It was dangerous. The chains binding Yui began to disappear. She was free. Reaching out to her, Seiyu excitedly called out to Yui. The girl's ghost flew rapidly towards him with outstretched arms. Their hands almost touched when Yui dissolved into thin air. Seiyu realized that it was just an illusion in the game. Exhausted, he fell to the ground and thought that he was still happy to have met her like this. He promised that the next time they met, he would bring her back to her senses. Returning home, Seiyu asked the system to show him his statistic. He had risen from the 2nd level to the 8th, and he had received 1,000 points. He thought the rewards were pretty good. It seemed that all his efforts in the dungeon had paid off. In addition, he received a soul stone, which is a source of energy. He would be able to use it for overload mode next time. As long as he gathered enough energy sources, he could wield overwhelming power using overload mode. Looking at his hands, Seiyu was stunned. What was this? When did he get so many scars? Could these be injuries from the underground city? That couldn't be. He hadn't taken that kind of damage. Taking off his shirt, he tried to understand what was going on. They were scattered all over his body. Could this be the sword's counterattack? Every time he activated overload mode, he ran out of energy and it affected his body. Every time he used overload mode, he suffered pain all over his body, but he thought there would be no consequences. He should have known that overload mode would not be easy to handle. But he didn't expect the price to be his body. He can no longer rely on overload mode, although at that moment, he was just scared. But who knows what might happen in the future? From another point of view, if the devouring sword can take a player's life, does that mean it is an extremely powerful weapon? If he cannot rely on the overload mode, he can use the devouring sword ability. Tomorrow, he will ask Shen to take him to the market. He has enough points to buy some equipment. The game can take the player's life, but he will bring more weapons to satisfy her. The next day, Shen was asked if she wanted to join the Taekwondo event after the break. The student yelled that he was an idiot. How could he let the class president join such a dangerous activity? Let her join his basketball team. Seiyu approached, put his hands on their shoulders, and told them to stop arguing. The class president had already promised him that she would help with his homework tonight. They were surprised that Seiyu had changed so much. The student shouted that he had been gone for a long time, and now he had come to the class president. How cunning. Seiyu replied that he had accumulated a lot of homework. The class president didn't want his performance to affect the whole class. He winked at Shen. The girl said okay. The lesson was about to start, and everyone had to return to their seats. Smiling, Se-yu asked if the class monitor would mind if he sat next to her. She replied that he should leave her alone. He asked why she was so angry. He was only trying to help her. Besides, he had something important to ask her. She replied that Se-yu had rejected her last time. He shouldn't belittle her for joining him in the dungeon. He finally understood how difficult it was to fight alone. At that moment, she saw the scars on his hands. Shen asked what had happened to his hand. Was it because of yesterday's attack in the dungeon? Se-yu replied that everything was fine. It was a long story, so she shouldn't worry. Shen replied embarrassedly that she wasn't worried. He said that last time she had mentioned the market. How about he pay her 300 points to take him there? The girl replied that she was going there anyway. Let him give her 500 points. Se-yu replied that he knew she would say that. At that moment, Se-yu's phone vibrated. The system announced that a new daily task had appeared. He thought, what the hell? Another stupid daily task. He wasn't going to do them for such little money. Saying that he was an idiot, Shen reminded him that the system would punish him if he didn't complete the daily task. The new task was to answer the teacher's question correctly. The reward was plus 50. The teacher asked if anyone could solve this question. The guy thought that no one should answer. If he didn't answer the teacher's question, it would be a problem. Raising her hand, Shen Yunyao smiled and wished him luck. Smiling, he replied that she shouldn't be so naive. He had a secret weapon. At that moment, the guy raised his hand using the title, "I'm so dazzling." The teacher thought that this student looked familiar and seemed particularly energetic. He told the student in the blue jacket to answer. Se-yu thought that this title was effective. After reading the question, Se-yu realized that he didn't know the answer. He needed to use the exchange. The system warned that the council was worth 20 points. The answer instantly appeared in his mind. Se-yu thought he felt good. He answered, and the teacher confirmed that it was correct. This student answered the question very quickly. Not bad. Smiling, Shen said that the title suited him. Se-yu replied that she was flattering him. He received a net profit of 30 points. Everything was fine. The professor continued to lecture the students. Looking at the guy, he thought, so he is Se-yu. At that time, at the headquarters of the Blood Moon Guild, the Shadow Destroyer reported what had happened. He said that the leader, Kong Shin, had died in battle. The new player is simply incredible. The head of the Blood Moon Guild couldn't believe that he had been hunting newbies and had died. After replaying part of the battle, the hooded man replied that it was this sword. The guild leader replied that it was no surprise. Other guilds would soon take action. He was sure he knew what to do. The masked man said he understood what the leader was talking about. Let him take care of it. Give him one day. Alive or dead, he would bring this guy to him. Looking at his watch, Se-yu realized it was already 12. Shen said to meet her here so they could go to the market together, but she was still not there. He heard Shen's dissatisfied voice asking what he was muttering about. He shouldn't talk behind her back. He replied that he was just wondering why her outfit was different from before. She replied that it was so that the other players wouldn't recognize her. He thought with a smirk that he could still recognize her. At that moment, the train arrived. The loudspeaker announced that passengers should be careful. This station is no longer in service. This is the last train. He said that because of her, they were almost late. Shen replied that he should shut up. They are getting on the last train. He asked what station it was, but Shen said he would soon find out. Suddenly, the lights went out. Se-yu asked if it was an accident. The girl asked why he was surprised. He should look out the window. After asking again to look out the window, he said, "What is there to see?" Suddenly, the stunned guy saw that everything outside the window was lit up and glowing. Not believing his eyes, Se-yu asked what kind of unusual place this was. She replied that they had arrived in the dungeon as soon as they boarded the train. Se-yu asked if the dungeon wasn't meant to destroy monsters. The girl said that it used to be the highest dungeon, but after persuasion from the Jinchang Association, it later turned into a stock market. They relied on this market to obtain land and become one of the 4 best partners, alongside Lionheart, Grey Mist, and Blood Moon. The 4 associations have their own leagues. She had heard that many of the rules in this game had been changed because of them. As far as she knew, the enemies they were fighting must be from Blood Moon. Now they had to be careful. At that moment, it was announced that the train had arrived at the station and would soon be closing. They had to get off. Se-yu realized that they had forcibly changed their equipment. Could this really be the exchange center? The system reported that the Jinchan Stock Exchange Association was in front of them. The guy said that this place was incredible. Shen told him to be careful. But is it normal to walk around like this in an open place? She replied that the association allows public fights. But he was right. It was better to take another route to avoid trouble. He asked why they should take the dark path. Shen said he shouldn't underestimate her. Compared to him, she knew the roads better. Suddenly, they heard a rough shout demanding that the girl stop right there. Frowning, Shen Yunyao said, "Have they been found out so quickly?" But Se-yu told her not to worry. They weren't the ones being pursued. The two guys asked the girl if it was her first time here. They were brothers and knew this place well. They could give her a tour. The girl replied that she didn't need it. Let her go. But the guy pulled her hands and told her to come here. She asked him to let her go. Suddenly, Seiyu said, "This girl." Shen was surprised. Did he know her? The guy replied that he had seen this girl on the day they fought. It was disgusting. These bastards dared to harass a girl. He wanted to intervene, but Shen stopped him. She said that they were enemies, and it wasn't worth getting involved in a fight. Seiyu replied that this was completely different. He hated those who bullied newcomers to the game. Shen sighed and told him to just wait and watch. At that moment, someone shouted for help. The system reported that an emergency signal had been detected. Operating mode activation. The guys were surrounded by robots. They told the criminals to stop their illegal activity. They were shocked that someone had activated the emergency system. Shen said that in an emergency, he could call for help, and the emergency system would be activated immediately. The system reported that the criminal had not yet stopped his illegal activities. One of the guys shouted that they were just a few robots and swung his sword. He yelled at them for daring to stand in their way. Disgusting robots. It was ridiculous to attack their brothers from the Blood Moon Association. A little sister should not resist her big brother. He was beginning to lose his patience. Excited, Seiyu shouted that they had to do something. Shen asked what was wrong with him. She told him to just watch. Suddenly, fire flashed above the boys' heads, and a stern voice asked who was fooling around on the territory of the Jin Association. In an instant, a fireball fell to the ground, and the boys flew in different directions. At that moment, a huge hand appeared, and a voice said, "Condensation power." Unable to resist, the boys clenched their teeth in rage and fell to their knees. A huge robot appeared in front of them, with a girl on top. She shouted, "How dare they destroy her beloved robots?" Seiyu asked who it was. A person from the Jin Chang Association. Shen replied that the stock market was Jin Chang's main source of income. Those who dare to break the rules here can be destroyed. The girl told little King Kong to make some noise. She calculated on a calculator the cost of saving the robots, the damage to the arena, and the cost of managing the security of the Jin Chang Association. A total of 3,000 points as punishment. Let them transfer it to her after double-checking. Otherwise, the association will punish them. Laughing, the guy replied that he had no points, but he had a weapon. Wielding his sword, he rushed to attack the girl. Unable to stand by and watch any longer, Seiyu rushed forward with a cry of caution. Shen shouted that he was stupid. He rushed towards them, trying to prevent the guy from attacking the girl from behind. Smiling, the girl asked if he dared to play tricks in front of her. At that moment, a huge robot stopped both the attacker and Seiyu's sword with a powerful blow of its hand. A moment later, the attacker was knocked off his feet and flew to the side, crashing to the ground with a crash. Smiling, Zhao Se said that it seemed he had gone a little too far. The girl replied that her brother was quite brave, but he had damaged the ground with his sword. She would give him an 8% discount and a penalty of 100 points. At that moment, Shen approached the girl and asked if she was all right. She thanked him and said that everything was fine. One of the Blood Moon guys ran up to the other and shouted at him not to die. Turning around, he shouted disgustedly. They from the Jin Chang Association dare to provoke the Blood Moon Association. But he didn't have time to finish because he received a crushing blow from the man in the mask. Stunned, Xiao Se and Shen Yunyao frowned and watched what was happening. The masked man said that such trash dared to call themselves part of the Blood Moon Association. He was destined to die. Shen said that it seemed the master had arrived. Xiao Se said that it shouldn't be so bad since they were on Jin Chang's land. Smiling, the girl asked if the Ghostface had destroyed him. He would have to pay a debt of 3,000. Smirking, the Ghostface replied that he was sorry, but he was not interested in underage girls. Looking at Xiao Se and Shen, he asked if Kong Xin had died at their hand. Covering Shen, Seiyu shouted that he was the one who did it. She had nothing to do with it. Shen told him not to talk nonsense. How could he have won without her help? Ghostface smiled. He had such an aura. Let them not worry, none of them could escape. At that moment, the girl with the robot asked furiously if Ghostface was ignoring her. He replied that his people had indeed committed an unforgivable act. He apologized for their reckless behavior, and they would compensate for the damage. Ghostface asked how about playing at the Casino of Destiny. Smiling, the girl asked if he was sure. Seiyu asked Shen about the Casino of Fate. The girl explained that it was a game of chance that used all the points and lives of both sides instead of bets. They were in danger now. If they were blown out of the trading city, they would be ambushed. But at the Casino of Fate, there was a chance to win. Smiling, the ghostly face asked if they were afraid. Shen said she didn't expect the Blood Moon to fight this way this time. Frowning, Seiyu said that if there was a chance to win, why should he refuse? he challenges him. The ghostly face laughed and said to watch out, so that he doesn't accidentally die. He'd better gather his courage. Don't think that son of a bitch is so fearless. In half an hour, the Casino of Fate will begin. And don't even think about running away, or he'll die a horrible death. The girl with the robot turned to Falcon and asked what her name was. Help is also paid for. She replied that her name was Chin Han, but she didn't have any points to pay with. It was true. It was her fault. In fact, she had come here to exchange items for points and save her brother. Frowning, Seiyu asked about her brother, the man who had attacked him with her last time. What had happened to him? She replied that the last time she went hunting with her brother and they fought against him, he used all his points to help her. But he was wounded. If she had told her brother that she was going here, he would not have let her go. So she came here without telling him. The girl said that although the rules of the association must be followed, seeing how pitiful she was, she would make an exception and take an item as payment. Chin Han suggested she take a look at her inventory. The girl replied that none of it was worth a penny. She said that was all she had. The girl replied that she could sell it all and get 500 points. Frowning, Seiyu said that she could see that these were her last possession, but he wanted to take everything she had, and that this was an honest association. She replied that he was right. Their association, Jin Chang, had never been honest, but if Chin Han needed points, she had no choice but to join these guys at the Casino of Destiny. Let her join these guys at the Casino of Destiny. There, she could earn a lot of money. But Seiyu shouted that this was a matter between them and the Blood Moon. It was a gamble with their lives. She shouldn't be involved. But Chin replied that without points, her brother wouldn't last long. Let her also take part in this Casino of Destiny. The Jin Chang Association bets on the strength and luck of the player, using all the points as chips, even at the risk of losing their lives. It is because of this irritation and uncertainty. This game of chance is a long-awaited project for the association, and every time, when they start the game, the Jin Chang Association can make a fortune. Seiyu asked why she was so actively luring him into the game. The girl replied that it looked like she would be able to earn a large sum tonight, and invited him to the Casino of Fate. She said that their Jin Chan Association was the leader of the 4 main guilds at level 98, the Golden Toad. Frowning, Seiyu said that if he was in difficult mode, no one could defeat him. She replied that the Lord of Illusions only liked to play and trade things related to gold. Their leadership had already signed a contract with the Lord of Illusions, which states that he is forbidden to harm the players. At that moment, the people of the Blood Moon arrived. Smiling, the ghostly face said that he had courage. Was he ready to say goodbye to his life? The girl said that both sides were silent before the competition, and now she would familiarize them with the rules. The Casino of Fate consists of 2 parts. The upper part is the Wheel of Fortune, and the lower part is the battlefield. After the participants join, each side chooses a random player to spin the Wheel of Fortune, and the participant can win a prize of 100 points. If the participant is dissatisfied with what he has received, he can spin the wheel again, but the point fee will be doubled. If they receive a reward, their teammates will receive it. They can use the new reward in battle. They must destroy the toad. The team that destroys the toad first will be the winner. The losing team will lose everything, and its participants will die in battle. The game will not end until one side is destroyed. Are they ready? Seiyu asked Tai Wu if she was sure she wanted to fight. She shouldn't do it. It has nothing to do with her. She replied that she would try to do everything for her brother and make up for what she had done before. Suddenly, Shen asked why he didn't ask her what she thought about it. Seiyu asked what she meant. Aren't they friends? Even though he doesn't know Tai Wu's strength, Shen's help wouldn't hurt. Suddenly, Tai Wu told them to listen to her. She has an idea. Reaching out, she handed something to Seiyu and said it was for him. The Shadow Destroyer told Ghostface not to be careless. He replied not to worry. They wouldn't be able to defeat him. The girl said that it seemed like both sides were ready, and now she announced, the game begins. The Blood Moon Guild hunters against the newbies. All players who came to the trading city. The Casino of Fate game reopens. This is the beginning of a new game of chance. The Blood Moon Guild and its members, Shadow Destroyer and Ghostface, against the new players. The Blood Moon Guild against unknown newbies. Hurry up and place your bets. The players were amazed that they dared to challenge Blood Moon. One of the players shouted that he was betting 1,000 on Blood Moon. The girl announced that the Illusion Master would now transport them to the playing field. Stunned, Seiyu realized that the Illusion Master had created a battlefield. He was on the Wheel of Fortune. This was the thing he was most worried about. He shouted to Yun Yao and Tai Wu to see if they could hear him. He was relying on them in battle. The girl replied that he was lucky, but if something bad happened, the blame would fall on him. When all the players were assigned to the playing field, the girl said that both sides were ready. In the first round, the Wheel of Fortune awaited them. Let them start spinning it. The wheel contained unlimited supply. Each item had no description, but white is the highest level, red is the middle level, and then there's green and blue. The guy thought that in the end, it was a wheel of fortune where the luckiest person wins. He had never lost at this before. Seeing the bursts of dark energy, Seiyu thought it was the Shadow Destroyer's skill. He realized that the Shadow Destroyer was changing places in the slot, using its abilities. Wasn't that cheating? At that moment, the girl said that there wasn't much movement in the first round. The results for both sides were as follows. The red side earned a red level item that added 50% to their combat power. As for the blue side, what a shame. It's a strong green gem. This item cannot be used in battle, but it can be exchanged for 10 points. Frowning, Seiyu said that he admits he was unlucky. But isn't the Shadow Destroyer's power too great? She replied that nothing can be done in this place without the permission of the illusion master. Don't be sad. He can spin the wheel again. If he doubles his points and it doesn't affect the other players, spinning again can change the results, but their points will be used up faster. No. First, he needs to figure something out. So, the battle part continued. Both sides can take their items right now. Shen said that Seiyu got the worst item. So the battle begins. Which side will destroy the first life? Shen said he was approaching. The two of them still have a chance to attack. Smiling, the Ghostface said that, as expected of the Shadow Destroyer, he got the best weapon in the first round. Now he will show the girls. Skill activation. The girls were shocked by what they saw. He said that his power is split in two. His clone contains half of his power. He can make clones with his power. Do they really think they have any chance? Seiyu thought that they had no advantages. The ghostly face asked with a smirk if they really thought they could succeed. Everything is completely different here. As long as they lose, they will lose their points. Clutching sword, Shen told Taiwu that it was time to test their strength. With a swing of her sword, the girl created a huge fiery whirlpool. Frowning, Taiwu swung her sword and shouted, "Blossom!" A stream of pink energy separated from her sword. At that moment, the Ghostface and his clone were rapidly approaching the girls. He shouted, "Claw of Destruction," and began to destroy the girl's energy stream with his sword swing. Delivering a deadly blow to the frog, he shouted, "And here's the first blood." The girl announced that the red team had successfully destroyed the first life. Without stopping laughing, Ghostface said that the results had already been recorded. They would enjoy their battle. Seiyu thought that, as expected, the Shadow Destroyer could know where the wheel would stop, and he could choose his reward. The ghostly face could double the power of any battle it received. If they switched, the power of the ghostly face would have the advantage. There was no way to target them. Their abilities gave them a huge advantage in the casino. But don't underestimate his power. The girl announced that the first round was over. The blue side lost a life. The players said that it was to be expected from newbies. Such noobs. They dared to challenge the Blood Moon with such luck. The girl announced that the second round had begun. Both sides spin the wheel of fortune. Watching the wheel, Xiao Se thought that now he knew where it would land. He also had a certain probability of knowing which area he would stand in. What would be the result of the second round? As expected of the Shadow Destroyer, it was red equipment. But for the blue team, it's such a shame. It's green equipment. The blue team once again received a strong green gem. The girl asked if anyone from either side wanted to add to their bet. Xiao Se shouted that he wanted to. She answered correctly. In this game, it's almost impossible to win unless you bet on higher level equipment. The players on the street said that with this guy's luck, he wouldn't win no matter how much he added. That would make him more significant. Let him lose completely. The red team, which received red equipment, decided not to add anything. If so, could the blue team win the round? What a shame. Green again. It's not a durable gem, but a healing stone that has the same use to some extent. Frowning, Xiao Se shouted furiously that he would continue to add. The girl announced that the blue team wanted to continue adding. Maybe they would be luckier in this round and get at least yellow equipment. She shouted green again. Their luck was very bad. Maybe they wanted to add again. Perhaps they would be lucky next time. But Xiaoyu replied no this time. He was stopping at this round. The players on the street decided that if they bet on the red team, they would win back their losses. The blue team would not be able to win. The guy told Shen and Tai Wu that the difference in strength was too great. Let them not try so hard, and just let them win a couple of points. Shen replied without any problem. Ghostface thought that this round was going well. Could they be plotting something? Separating himself from his clones, he shouted that no matter how hard they tried, it was useless. The girl announced that Ghostface had made his clones again. The red team easily scored another point. The blue team was losing in both luck and strength. Seiyu thought it was great. Now they had to quickly move on to the next round. The host said the blue team seemed calm. Their luck was not yet determined. Perhaps they wanted to make an epic comeback by making an incredible bet. They moved on to the next round, and the blue team was green again. Seiyu shouted to continue. He kept adding 200, then 400. She said it was either bad luck or good luck. The blue team got green 10 times. The aura of the ghost face is very strong. He continues to get points. The blue team is not that strong and cannot block his attack. The players on the street were wondering what was wrong with this guy. He continues to get green equipment. It's the first time they've seen it happen 10 times in a row. The girl said that after another fight in this round, the situation is as follows. The blue team is in a dire situation. They cannot win the wheel and win the fight. But what about the red team? They haven't lost a single life. The outcome of this game is a foregone conclusion. The Ghost Destroyer said that the guys are destined to lose in the last round. But Seiyu asked, really? What if he says that everything is under his control and he will win in the next round? The host was stunned. The blue team dared to say such words. But do they really have a chance? If they can step on the smallest part of the white area and gain the power of the Master of 1,000 Illusions, they can win the round. But she remembers that no one was able to do this in the last 100 rounds. The players decided that this guy was crazy. He thinks he will win. The ghostly face thought that, as expected, this guy was up to something, but that wouldn't be a problem. He told the Shadow Destroyer to aim for the white zone in the next round. He replied that he wasn't sure he could do it. Let him try until he can. Worried, Tai Wu asked Shen if they had a chance. She replied that this guy might be reliable when the time came. She looked at Seiyu and thought that now all hope rested on him. The host announced that the blue side was still calm. Could it be that they had a secret weapon capable of changing the outcome of the game? Let them begin. And the results of this game. The blue team is green again. It seems their viewers are disappointed. The Shadow Destroyer got red equipment again. He missed a little and didn't hit the white zone. Does that mean the red team is aiming for the white zone? Both sides shouted that they were adding. They continued. The blue team got green again, and the red team didn't hit the white zone. Neither side is going to lose to the other. After the previous rounds of adding extra bets, they will cost 6,400 points. Both sides have spent everything. Frowning, Seiyu thought that he would have no more points to add in the next round. His result is green again. And for the red side, the Shadow Destroyer touched the white side. The record of 100 rounds was broken. The players on the street shouted that it was a great round. Thank you to this player. Someone will become rich tonight. The girl said, what a shame. Apparently the game is coming to an end. Now they will watch the attack of the Illusion Master. The satisfied Ghostface said that the Shadow Destroyer was so reliable. The excited girls stood silently, waiting for their fate from the attack. Suddenly, Seiyu shouted, does he really think he's destined to lose? Now let him watch carefully. The Copper Destroyer can only be used in the last round. Before the fight, Tai Wu said that it was for them. She believed that it would be effective during their fight. It was from her brother. He said that it could be used to save them in times of danger. Taking out the medallion that the girl had given him, Seiyu shouted, let's go, Tai Wu. The girl shouted for her brother to lend her his strength and grabbed the medallion. The host said, unbelievable. The blue side used the ability to switch places. In an instant, Tai Wu was standing next to the Shadow Destroyer in Seiyu's place. Seiyu stood in the arena next to Shen Yunyao. He looked at his opponent with a smirk. The players on the street were stunned. What kind of trick was this? Let them hurry up and lose already. They had bet everything on Blood Moon. Smiling, Ghostface asked what he would do at a moment like this. After all, now they had the incredible power of the Master of Illusions himself. The players shouted that a golden toad had appeared. Let them crush this loser. Blood Moon wins. At that moment, Seiyu thought that he really did not expect them to receive such a high reward. But he cannot lose. Adding so many times, he spent a lot of points to get as many crystals as possible. After all, crystals are his energy. Using the crystals he had won, Seiyu shouted furiously, Devourer, activate! Laughing, the ghostly face shouted that he knew the guy would use this trick. But what could he do to a level 98 boss? Even using all his strength, he would not be able to defeat him. He shouted furiously, come on, Master of Illusions. And in an instant, a powerful stream of energy flew at Seiyu. But the guy replied that he was not going to lose and used energy absorption. Thanks to Tai Wu, he had an idea of how to win. Before the game, he said he would buy all her green equipment at double the price. He absorbed it, increasing his strength, agility, and defense. He saved this crystal for last. It can increase defense by 5%. He threw it at the Illusion Master's energy and shouted for him to destroy it. It was incredible. The blue team managed to withstand the Illusion Master's attack. The host said that the Illusion Master's attack lasts only 5 seconds. If the blue team can withstand it, the audience was in shock. How is this possible? This guy is holding back the attack. What kind of weapon does he have? The guy was struggling to hold back the boss. It was the power of the 98th level. Shen shouted excitedly to Seiyu. She stood next to him and shouted that she would help him. Her energy was also directed towards the golden toad. She said she couldn't leave everything to him. Seiyu warned her to be careful. The attack was very powerful. The host said in amazement that it was unbelievable, but the blue side was still holding on. Both sides were still facing each other. The enraged Ghostface thought he couldn't let him win and used cloning. Deciding that now was the best moment to attack, he and his clones rushed at Seiyu. At that moment, Seiyu shouted that they didn't have time. Yun Yao had to try her best. Frowning, the girl replied that she knew and would do everything in her power. Putting all their strength into it, they resisted the crushing energy of the illusion master. Furiously cursing, Seiyu shouted for her to come back. The blue side delivered a powerful blow. Despite the illusion master's powerful attack, it rebounded. At that moment, the Ghostface with his clones was rapidly approaching them. He shouted furiously that he couldn't let this happen. He could do it too. He was the Ghostface, and no worse than anyone else. The stunned host said that there was an incredible surge of energy on the battlefield. This is impossible. The illusion master stopped the lightning strike. What will happen now? The blue side barely managed to hold back the attack, and now its strength is running out, but it managed to protect its last life. The red team's totem should have been destroyed by such a powerful attack, but it only lost one life. The outcome is a foregone conclusion. But wait. The red side. The Ghostface was hit by the attack and fell. The blue side now has a chance. At that moment, the Ghost Destroyer said to start the next round. They can still win. The guy shouted, "Tai Wu." She replied, "Got it. Let him catch it," and threw the medallion. Shocked, the Shadow Destroyer realized with amazement that she had thrown the medallion to him. A few moments later, he began to teleport onto the battlefield. Exhausted by the battle, the Ghostface teleported to the Wheel of Fortune. Smiling, Seiyu said, "Here they are, meeting again. Judging by his skills, he's useless in close combat. Now they have a chance to win." Gritting his teeth in anger, Shadow Destroyer said he was giving up. The stunned host said that Shadow Destroyer had admitted defeat. The winner of this game is... The shocked audience shouted, "How is this possible? They had bet everything on Blood Moon." The host announced that the blue team had won. They congratulated the new players, Seiyu, Shen Yun Yao, and Tai Wu. Tai Wu asked Shen if she was okay. She replied that she was fine, just a little injured. Seiyu sighed heavily and said with relief that it was tough, but they had won. The Shadow Destroyer told Ghostface that they were leaving. Ghostface shouted threateningly for Seiyu to wait for him. Smiling, the host said that now they should enjoy the applause of the audience. But the audience was furious. They shouted that he was pretending to be a novice to deceive everyone. They could take revenge on Seiyu. Laughing, the host said she didn't think the audience would react so violently. Smiling, Seiyu replied that despite what they were saying, he was still the winner. Suddenly, he heard someone say that it was a good victory. The girl said that their association, Jin Chang, had made a lot of money today. The delighted host shouted, "Is the vice president here too?" She missed her so much. Maybe she could stay with her tonight, and she threw herself into her arms. Shen said that there were many rumors about the vice president. Although she was not strong in battle, she had earned a lot of money for the association. She was the god of the Qingzi fan. Seiyu thought that with such a large guild, there could be a lot of problems. It would be better to leave quickly. He told the vice president that the game was over. He thought it was time for them to go. She replied that the Jin Chang Association couldn't let the guests leave just like that. They were injured, and the guild couldn't let them go without treatment. The surprised girl said that the magic spring was a secret treasure of their guild. Only members of the Dungeon Raiders group could use it. The vice president replied that they had earned a lot of money for the Jin Chang guild, so they deserved it. Seiyu said they had more important things to do. Shen hit the guy and yelled that he was an idiot. What could be more important than going to the Jin Chang guild's magical spring? The legendary magical spring could not only eliminate negative effects, but also restore physical strength and improve the player's characteristic. It can also make girls more beautiful. They would gladly go to this spring. The vice president told them to follow her. Scratching the bruised area, Seiyu sighed and thought that he hoped there would be no more trouble. After a while, they reached the Jin Chang Guild's magical spring. Sitting in the water, Seiyu said that this magical spring was not bad. The wounds really began to heal. Looking at the scars all over his body, the guy wondered if it could be cured, but leaning back, he decided that he needed to enjoy this large spring first. At that moment, Shen Yun Yao and Tai Wu entered. Shen said that it was indeed large. Coughing and pinching his nose, Seiyu shouted, "Why are you wearing that? You scared me." She asked what else to wear to come to the spring. So, how much did they earn? The guy opened the screen and said a total of 99,480 points, 30,000 each. If it weren't for Tai Wu, it would have been difficult to win. Even though her brother wanted to destroy him, he would forget about it. Let him recover. He owes him a debt. The girl promised that when he recovered, she would take him to him so that he could make amends. She got the points, and now she would go back and cure her brother. She would definitely repay Seiyu and Yun Yao. Shen shouted for her to be careful. Looking at Seiyu, Shen asked why he ran away in the alley. He replied that he couldn't watch and do nothing. She asked what was wrong with him. It's a tattoo. He replied that they were scars from battle. The vice president said they weren't scars. Seiyu doesn't understand the situation. In fact, he is a remarkable specimen. Well, these are sword marks. He asked in surprise what sword marks were. She explained that an unusual blade is a rare weapon in the game. Its power even ignores the game's balance mechanic. It appeared in the hands of one player 2 years ago. Using this blade, he competed with 4 guilds. His weapon and the mark on his body are not much different from what that player had. Smiling, Shen said that it was clear why he was incredibly strong. The vice president said that the unusual blade was certainly powerful, but in the end, it doesn't last long. Frowning, Seiyu asked what she meant. She replied that he should check his stats himself. Opening his stats, Seiyu was shocked by what he saw on the screen. She said that powerful strength requires sacrifice. His situation is like that guy's. His HP stats are turning black. When the health bar turns completely black, he will die. Shen was worried and asked how this could be. Was there any way to fix it? She said there was no way. The scales of the sacred healing dragon that drop in the realm of the red wax dragons in the S-rank dungeon. They can eliminate anomalies. But the Blood Moon Guild has taken over the Red Dragon Kingdom, and the dungeons are filled with thousands of monsters with unusual powers. And he can only use short bursts of power. It is impossible to obtain the scales of the healing dragon. Does he want to join their guild, Jin Chang? With their power and money, they can negotiate with the Blood Moon Guild about the deal for the scales of the sacred healing dragon. Seiyu realized that she had already calculated everything when she invited them here. He replied that he appreciated the invitation, but it was so sudden. Could she give him some time to think? She replied that whatever choice Seiyu made, she was looking forward to his performance again. Maybe he would bring it to an end. Diving headfirst into the water, the guy thanked her for her understanding. He thought that he himself guessed that this power was unusual, and that he would not get it so easily. If he couldn't live long, he had to earn 1 billion points. The guy returned home, and was resting peacefully in his bed, when he felt someone waking him up. He asked discontentedly what was going on. Why wouldn't they let him sleep? It was still so early. Suddenly, he saw a girl from the Jin Chang clan. She said it wasn't early anymore. He had slept through the whole day. Shocked, Seiyu jumped up and shouted, asking why she was in his bed. What was she doing here? The surprised girl asked if he didn't remember what had happened last night. Last night, he slept in a magical spring. The head of Qingzi asked her to bring him back to bed. He should thank her. He replied that she scared him terribly. The girl said that she was actually here today because she had good news. She had received information that an expensive member of the association had recently appeared on the black market in the eastern part of the city, a weirdo obsessed with weapons and props. He had been missing since he left the guild, but recently he appeared out of nowhere, and supposedly he had what Seiyu needed right now, the sacred scales of the dragon. At that moment, Shen Yunyao approached them and said that was good. They needed to go to the black market. She had always wanted to see the black market of the Jin Chang Association. The girl replied that the black market was not a place you could just go to. The guild turned a blind eye to this place for its own interests. Was she sure she wanted to go? Yu said he was sure because of what had happened in the last game. Many people were watching him in Blood Moon, and he was sure they wouldn't stop. Yun Yao didn't need to get involved in such a dangerous situation. This time, he would figure it out on his own. She remembered how he yelled at Yun Yao to get out of there. It's dangerous. He can do it alone. She hit him and yelled that he was an idiot. What is he talking about? Without her, he would have died 100 times. He is always in danger. But every time, he always takes a big risk. Besides, she is not one to abandon her teammates. At least not this time. He replied, "Okay, we need to get ready." At that moment, a guy in the black market was shouting, "Don't miss this limited time special offer of rare materials from the monster in the dungeon." In order not to attract attention, Seiyu and Shen Yunyao dressed in black cloaks. The girls suggested that Seiyu have some fun. He said that the place seemed pretty nice. Shen replied that it probably was for him. But first, they had to find that guy. He couldn't get into any more trouble. He replied that she shouldn't worry. He would be careful. But with a photo like that, it would be difficult to find him on the black market. It would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. The girl replied that he was an idiot. If he hadn't asked how they left before, they wouldn't have been driving for more than 2 hours. At that moment, a guy stood in front of them and asked why his brother was so sad. He had problems. Seiyu replied yes. But how could such a small child help him? Smiling, the The boy said he had come to the black market and didn't even know him. He was famous in this market. For money, he would find any information. Leaning over to Sei-yu, Shen said that they had been wandering around here for so long. Maybe they should ask him. Showing him the photo, Sei-yu asked if he had ever seen this man at the black market. Smiling, he replied that he knew this guy. He saw him come to the black market a week ago. 100 points and he'll take you there. The girl said 50 points, or they would find him themselves. He himself said that he was somewhere on the black market. The guy shouted that it was too little. She replied, then 40. The guy replied, okay, since she's a girl, he'll lower the price. Soon he led them to the place and said he was there. Stunned, Shen Yunyao asked if it wasn't a dump. He replied that after that bastard Bree bought the place at a high price, it became a dump. Su Yu asked if he had led them into some kind of trap. The guy shouted, what are you talking about? He's the most honest guy in this market. At that moment, they noticed that the door had opened and someone had come out. The guy said that it was him, the strange Bree. The man who came out was carrying a large metal object. He asked the boy if it was him again. He said that he didn't need any help. Let him leave, because he would be the next one to end up in this dump. Surprised, Shen asked what he was talking about. She shouted at the guy, asking if he was scared. He replied that she didn't know how terrible the strange Bree was. At that moment, Sei-yu shouted, asking if he could talk to Bree for a minute. But Bree replied without turning around that he was very busy right now. He told him not to bother him. The guy thought that it was really difficult to get along with him. He shouted that Xiao Wangxi had sent him to him. He replied angrily that this woman with a lot of makeup kept bothering him. She had sent someone to him again. Sei-yu asked if something was wrong. Weren't they good friends? Clenching his fist fiercely, Bree shouted that he didn't want to destroy his card on the black market this time. The guy shouted that it was some kind of misunderstanding. He wanted to make a deal with him. He needed healing scales. At the last moment, Bree stopped and asked again about the healing scales. Sei-yu answered correctly. How many points did he want? Let him name his price. But Bree turned to leave and said he wasn't interested in points, but if he could use it. If he passed his test, he would give him the healing scales. Stunned, Sei-yu wondered what the hell. A motorcycle. The strange Bree said that tomorrow there would be a tournament called Extreme Speed. If he won it, he would give him the scales. Smiling, Sei-yu thought that he didn't know what this guy was thinking, but he was the best at racing game. He agreed. Releasing a burst of energy, Bree said that he should leave them. Sei-yu lost his balance. Surprised, he couldn't stay on his feet and flew to the side. Shen shouted excitedly to Sei-yu, asking if he was okay. The boy smiled and said that he knew he wouldn't last 5 minutes before he blew up. Now he had to pay him. He replied that he should wait a little. He needed to ask him something. Smiling, the boy asked him something. Now he knew how reliable he was. Sei-yu said that there would be an extreme speed tournament tomorrow. He didn't know how to register for it. He replied that you needed a motorcycle to participate in this tournament. On the black market, the price of a motorcycle was at least 8,000 points. In addition, there was an entry fee, a deposit, and so on. Did he have that much money? Sei-yu replied, okay. The stunned boy shouted that 8,000 was not much for him. He is so rich. Then let's go together. Sei-yu asked if he also wanted to participate. He replied that an extreme speed tournament is not just a race. You need to develop a route and tactic. He is a master at such things, so he could ride with him in the race. Shen said they had to leave. This guy clearly wanted his points. The boy shouted that he didn't need his points. If he didn't trust him, he could do it for free. Sei-yu asked him to let go of his leg. After thinking about it, Sei-yu decided that this boy didn't seem to have any bad intention, and time was running out. He said he believed him. Now let him get ready for the race. The guy said it was the right decision. He would help him win this race. Frowning, Shen asked if that meant that in order to get the healing dragon scales, he would have to challenge that freak, Bree. He replied that was correct. He had set those conditions and had no other choice. The boy simply said that he should know that Bree was not so easy to defeat. The strange Bree was #1 in extreme racing, and no one had beaten him in recent years, and there were rumors that he wanted to break the Ancient One's record. The young man was stunned that he didn't know about the Ancient One. He was a legendary player who fought against 4 guilds single-handedly. Frowning, Sei-yu thought that maybe this was the player with the same sword as his that Qin-Shi had mentioned. The young man added that in any case, Bree was very strong, and if he wanted to win, he would be ready for anything. Shen said that they had no experience in this. It would be difficult for them. Sei-yu replied that if they lost, they would just lose points. It was worth the risk. The boy shouted, "Are you talking about losing? With such a talented captain as him, Sei-yu can relax." After a while, he led them to a store that sells racing motorcycles. Racing motorcycles are sold automatically here. You just need to pay with points. Sei-yu took a look and said it looked good. The boy sighed, saying his brother didn't know how to choose motorcycle. You have to judge by power and performance. Let him help him. At that moment they heard someone say, "There's little Faye." Turning around, they saw some girls. One of them said she had been looking for him all day. What was he doing in a racing shop? The guys standing nearby said they were people from the Red Weights team. They'd better leave before there was trouble. The girl told Faye that the extreme speed tournament was about to start. What was he doing here? He should go and service the team's car. He replied that he was also participating in the extreme speed race this time. He wouldn't have time to help Hong Yan. Frowning, Hong Yan asked what he said. Was he really going to participate in the extreme speed race? Grabbing him by the collar, she shouted, "Stop joking around. Come up with a better excuse." What kind of idiot would team up with a guy like him, who had never participated in a race before? Smiling, Shen repeated, "Idiot." It seemed she was talking about Sei Yu. Little Faye shouted that they had said that if he joined the team and worked for a month, they would take him on as a pilot. But he had already been working for 6 months. Watching Sei Yu, he wondered what was going on. The girl told him not to be so ungrateful. If it weren't for them, he would still be on the black market. If she destroyed him, tomorrow other mongrels would come running to her and beg her to take them. At that moment, Sei Yu shouted, "Stop!" Hadn't she been taught not to put her feet anywhere? Especially in front of other people. He grabbed the girl by the leg, and she lost her balance. Another girl ran up to her and asked if the captain was okay. An enraged Hong Yan shouted, "Who is he?" Smiling, Sei Yu said he was a man who was racing with Faye. Laughing, Hong Yan asked if he was really an idiot to compete with him in the race. He replied that he was also a newcomer to the race, so he didn't see anything wrong with it. It didn't matter what they had. He wouldn't let them touch this guy until tomorrow's race. The girls took out their swords and shouted how dare he mess with their red scale team. He must not want to live. But the captain stopped them. She told them to stop. They were leaving. Watching them leave, Sei Yu couldn't believe they just walked away. Shen punched her fist and told little Faye that he was hiding a lot from them. Lowering his eyes, Faye replied that they should forgive him. He lied. He wasn't a very good driver. He was just a backup for the Red Scales. He had always loved race car drivers and was so happy to participate in extreme races. Reaching out his hand, Sei Yu said that he had misunderstood everything. He didn't care what kind of driver he was. As he had already said, he took him into the race because he simply wanted him to participate. At that moment, Hong Yan called to say she had good news. Did he remember the Wheel of Fortune game a few days ago, when the guy had angered many people? She had met him on the black market. Her interlocutor replied that she would not be able to defeat him, even though there was a big reward for him. But this guy was strong. Hong Yan replied that she couldn't win the battle, but if they teamed up in the races, the reward would be theirs. The next day, they went to the extreme racing tournament. The hostess welcomed them to the 42nd Extreme Speed Tournament. The girl announced that she would be the host of this exciting competition today. All the racers are already at the starting line. It looks like they are ready to go. Also participating in extreme speed today are 2 mysterious newcomers. They recently defeated the Blood Moon Guild in the Wheel of Fortune. They are the new stars of the city of Jinchang. They are Sei Yu and Yun Yao. Will they be able to perform another miracle tonight? Smiling, Sei Yu said he hoped Yun Yao would help him. She replied that she wouldn't. She just wanted to participate in the race. Besides, if she helps him win, he will return the points she paid for this race. Sei Yu replied, "Of course." At that moment, Faye got in touch and asked if his brother remembered what he had said. Sei Yu replied, "Of course," and asked what was wrong with the dark circles under his eyes. The guy replied, "Yes, they are. He's fine. He just spent the whole night studying the route map. Let him believe they won't lose in extreme speed." At that moment, the race participants standing behind them were watching them closely. One of them said that it was Sei Yu. The reward for this guy would belong to them. At that moment, Hong Yan caught up with them and told them not to rush. There's no need to rush during the hunt. You have to enjoy the process. The host said that in addition to the 2 mysterious newcomers, we shouldn't forget about the main contender of their tournament. He was 3rd in the extreme speed leaderboard. He had the best chance of winning this tournament. This was the strange Bree. Would he be able to break the record? Therefore, before starting the race, she would repeat the rule that players could only use motorcycles and equipment that were registered in the race and meet the criteria. It is forbidden to use acceleration skills and destroy the track. In case of danger, the player can use the emergency disconnection device on their wrist to forcibly leave the field, but it is better to use it as a last resort. The host announced the start of the race. She said that after passing through the portal, the racetrack would open up. All the motorcycles took off from their starting position. Next to Sei Yu's motorcycle, Hong Yan's motorcycle was flying by. Little Faye warned Sei Yu that there was a track ahead. It was a long, straight road. Let him speed up and be the first. Suddenly, Sei Yu noticed that one of the racers was rushing after him. He shouted, "Where is that kid going?" Seiyu thought that he knew that the girl had called her friends for help. At that moment, the second racer was rapidly approaching Yun Yao. He shouted, "Where is that beauty going?" Fei shouted at his older sister to turn aside. She replied that if he called her older sister again, she would sew his mouth shut. The girl veered sharply to the side to avoid being hit by her pursuer. As he approached, Hong Yan shouted for the guys to cover her. Now was not the time for them. She had spent a lot of points to hack the emergency disconnection device on the guy's arm. In other words, he couldn't get away. This guy was still too young, but he had taken such a big sword to the race. Smiling, Hong Yan held her weapon in front of her and shouted that the hunt had begun. Deadly bullets flew after Seiyu, who was rapidly driving away. Excited, Shen Yunyao told Seiyu that the pursuers had too much firepower. He shouted to Xiao Fei if there was any way to get rid of them. Fei, who was also worried, thought that Seiyu's bike wasn't fast enough to get ahead. How could they get away from their pursuers? Suddenly, he had a brilliant idea and shouted for Seiyu and Yun Yao to speed up in 10 seconds. The guy asked Fei if he was sure. There was a sharp turn ahead. He replied that there was no time to explain. He should just trust him. 10 seconds later, he shouted, "Now!" And Seiyu and Yun Yao accelerated sharply. Stunned, Hong Yan shouted, "What are you doing? Are you going to jump off the track?" At that moment, Fei said he was right. There was a hidden passage right at the bend. This hidden passage would help them leave their pursuers behind. Smiling, Seiyu asked again if they should fight them off. Why would he need that? Catching up with them, Hong Yan cursed furiously. This guy had found the hidden passage. She yelled at the girls accompanying her to speed up. They needed to catch up with them. Suddenly, Seiyu appeared above them and shouted that they wouldn't succeed. Swinging his sword, he shouted, "Take this!" and struck the motorcycle. Seiyu smiled and said that now she was without a motorcycle. The enraged girl used the bracelet on her wrist for an emergency disconnection. At that moment, Yun Yao snatched the weapon from her hands and shouted that she would take it for herself. Hong Yan approached them and shouted that they were cunning bastards. Smiling in response, Seiyu and Shen Yun Yao shouted their thanks for the compliment. The host said it was unbelievable. Red Scales and Seiyu seemed to be fighting each other instead of racing. On the other hand, for some reason, the Strange Bree was in last place. Strange Bree decided at that moment that it was time to start. He would definitely take first place in this race. He could do it. He began to rapidly pick up speed, firing projectiles at everyone. Strange Bree shouted that they should prepare to lose. The explosions of his projectiles caused the motorcycles in front to explode one after another. Passing by the colorful torches, the Strange Bree said that the device had been successfully tested. At that moment, Seiyu noticed that Bree was rapidly approaching him, leaving colorful flames behind him. They looked around excitedly, not understanding what this guy was going to do. Shooting at Seiyu, Hong Yan said with a smirk that now they would see how long he could last. Gritting his teeth in rage, Seiyu cursed. He thought it would not be so easy. At that moment, the rapidly approaching Strange Bree fired a powerful projectile. Anxious, Shen Yunyao shouted for Seiyu to be careful. At that moment, the laughing Hong Yan pointed her weapon at him and shouted for him to go to hell. Looking at the approaching projectile, Seiyu realized it was too fast. He wouldn't be able to dodge it. At that moment, Fei shouted that if he continued at the same pace, his motorcycle would not last long. Trying to dodge, Seiyu shouted to Yun Yao that there was a turn ahead. They had to take a risk. Deciding that this was their only chance to escape pursuit, they accelerated to maximum speed. Smiling, Hong Yan said that because they had accelerated, it would be easier for her to attack them. She shot at him, but the guy tilted the motorcycle and raised his sword. At that moment, Shen Yunyao also accelerated to get ahead of their pursuers. The host commented admiringly that Seiyu and Shen Yunyao were accelerating on the turn. It was an excellent drift. To make the turn at high speed, they had to lean their motorcycles heavily. At that moment, they managed to overtake the girls from the red fans. Smiling, Hong Yan shouted, "Well, what's the point of overtaking them? They'll just become her target." Smiling, Seiyu replied that it depended on who else would become the target now. Suddenly, the shocked girls noticed a rocket rapidly approaching them. There was a powerful explosion behind Seiyu. He shouted to the Strange Bree, thanking him for his rocket. At that moment, the boys laughed, thinking that this strange woman had finally died. Now they could take the prize for themselves. Waving his torch, the boy shouted furiously that he would show him where he belonged. Frowning, Seiyu suggested that Shen Yunyao deal with them as well. The guy shouted that he had never lost a single race in close combat. The second guy threw several shells at them and shouted for them to try it. Dodging the shells, Shen Yunyao shouted at Seiyu to be careful. There was a powerful explosion, and Seiyu shouted at Yunyao to get out of the way. The girl turned aside to let the guy pass. At that moment, the strange Bree pushed one of the guys off his motorcycle. The other two guys gritted their teeth furiously when they saw the strange Bree rapidly approaching. He knocked them off their motorcycle, and to avoid being killed, they used the emergency disconnect. The host said that the strange Bree would not stop. He was destroying everything in his path. Little Faye screamed like this. Now let them take Route B as planned. Smiling, Seiyu replied that he accepted. They took Route B and sped up. Suddenly, Shen Yunyao saw some kind of sign in front of her and asked what it was. The guy also noticed the unknown obstacle and wondered excitedly what it was. Frowning, he cursed furiously, realizing that he would not be able to dodge it. A moment later, there was a powerful explosion, and Seiyu and Shen Yunyao flew up into the air along with their motorcycles. Trying to regain his balance, the guy shouted excitedly, "Yunyao!" The host asked if they could continue. Seiyu and Shen Yunyao were unable to dodge the attack. The two fell into the river. Hong Yan approached Fei, who was sitting behind the screen, and said that he had finally lost. Thanks to him, her racing motorcycle had broken down. As soon as he left the track, she would beat the shit out of him. Without looking up, the guy smiled and asked who said he had lost. Before the race, he told Seiyu to remember that there were many hidden moves at extreme speeds. Some of them were dangerous or short, and some were very useful. During the race, he would give them clues in all 4 directions for hidden routes. He would find the winning route. Fei shouted that this was only the beginning. At that moment, Seiyu and Shen Yunyao were stubbornly moving along the bottom of the river. The host asked in surprise how they were moving through the water. At that moment, they got out onto dry land. The girl shouted that it was unbelievable. Shen Yunyao and Seiyu successfully got out of the water. They hadn't lost yet. The strange Bree was destroying all the players in his path. Ahead, the lanes merged. Would they be able to avoid Bree's attack? Firing a powerful volley of rockets, Bree shouted that they wouldn't be so lucky a second time. Racing at breakneck speed, Seiyu and Yunyao tried to escape the deadly shells. Seeing that Seiyu's body had burst into flames, Shen shouted at him not to use overload. His body couldn't take it anymore. The guy replied that he had no choice. If he lost, everything would be even more hopeless. With a sharp swing of his sword, he destroyed the shells approaching him. The host announced that Seiyu had used the same explosion as in the Wheel of Fortune game to repel the attack of the strange Bree. Turning around, Bree furiously threw Seiyu. Had he still not given up? A moment later, he released a new stream of devastating missiles. But since he had used his abilities, he would use his as well. Clenching his fist furiously, the strange Bree shouted, "Take this," and released a stream of energy. In an instant, Bree's energy-guided missiles headed for Seiyu's motorcycle. Seiyu and Shen Yunyao were surrounded on all sides by powerful, devastating explosions. The host said that this was Bree's signature ability, the ability to completely block or even destroy the opponent's higher skills. He blocked their way to the road. Shen Yunyao and Seiyu cannot pass. Gritting his teeth in rage, Seiyu thought it was incredible pressure. It felt as if his body was about to be crushed. The host commented that Seiyu and Yunyao were affected by Bree's ability. They fought well, but were helpless against an irresistible force. The strange Bree would soon be at the finish line. This time, he had a good chance of breaking the record. At that moment, Fei said that, as expected, they still couldn't defeat the strange Bree. Frowning, Seiyu asked Xiao Fei where his confidence had gone. He replied that there was really nothing they could do now. Even if they got out of the high-pressure field, it would be difficult to catch up with him. Shen shouted for him to shut up and take a good look at it. Seiyu, this unreasonable guy, will not lose. Frowning, Seiyu shouted that they had a chance. Absorption mode. Use the soul stone to absorb energy. The surprised host asked if Seiyu could really continue. His weapon had transformed. Was it now a spear instead of a sword? Looking at the guy, Shen Yunyao thought that everything would work out for them. They just needed to focus. The audience was amazed. What were they going to do in such a situation? It was simply unbelievable. Swinging the spear with all his might, Seiyu shouted that he was counting on Yunyao. Thinking that this was simply incredible power, the girl caught the thrown spear. The host shouted that it was amazing. There had never been such a combination of skills before. This girl, Shen Yunyao, caught Seiyu's spear and began to break through. It's incredible how fast she's going. In an instant, she caught up with the strange Bree. Turning around, the strange Bree was shocked by what he saw and cursed furiously. The girl thought that holding this spear was very difficult. Her palm was burning. Could it be that Seiyu was experiencing the same pain? but she couldn't lose. Strange Bree's attacks were ineffective. Bree was shocked. It was incredible to use explosive power to catch up with him. This guy was interesting. The host shouted that Shen Yunyao was approaching Strange Bree. The finish line is ahead. Which one of them will come first? Who will win? Watching Shen, the guys excitedly clench their fists, hoping for luck. Gritting her teeth fiercely and holding on tight to the steering wheel, Shen Yunyao decides she must win. The announcer shouted that they had both crossed the finish line, but it was so fast that it was impossible to see who had done it first. Who is the winner? We need to look at the system counter to find out the winner. It's amazing. The difference is only 6 milliseconds. The winner of the race is Shen Yunyao. 20 minutes later, the high-pressure zone created by the Strange Bree disappeared, and the last survivor, Seiyu, successfully crossed the finish line. The competition is over. Although Seiyu was in no particular hurry to finish, luckily for him, there were only 3 participants left. Therefore, he took 3rd place. The host shouted that everyone could now welcome today's participants on stage. The audience shouted how wonderful it was. Finally, someone had found someone who could defeat the Strange Bree. The winners of the race took their places on the podium. Shen Yunyao and Seiyu smiled happily. Little Fei shouted, "Awesome!" He didn't think they could win. Now he is also considered a champion navigator. Hong Yan won't dare to tease him. Smiling, Seiyu told Yunyao that she was magnificent. The girl replied that it was nothing special, just a normal race. Turning to Bree, he said that now, as promised, Bree had to give him the healing dragon scale. Smiling, Bree replied that he was in 2nd place, and Seiyu was in 3rd. So was that really a victory? Stunned, Seiyu said that he had helped Yunyao take 1st place. That counted as a victory. Bot replied that he was looking at the results. The host announced that the organizers had also invited a special guest to today's award ceremony. Everyone knows that Mr. Gu Qi has left the overall ranking, so they invited the next person in the ranking, an impossibly strong person. The stunned audience was amazed. Why did they call this guy? It's dangerous. The host said that his spirit makes others tremble with fear, but at the same time, he is the president of the Red Moon Association. Let's all welcome Mr. Leng Jing. When they saw him, Seiyu and Shen Yunyao were amazed that this man was the president of Red Moon. The host asked him to do the honors and handed him the cup. He replied that he was grateful to her for the invitation. Frowning, Seiyu wondered if he was here to settle scores with him. The president said that Miss Yunyao's performance today was magnificent. This award and her beauty go well together. The girl thanked him for the compliment. Presenting the cup, Leng Jing told Bree that they hadn't seen each other in a long time. He needed to work harder to break the record. Bree replied that he should stay away from him. The president approached Seiyu with the cup and said that he had heard a lot about him. Red Moon gets a lot of attention from him. Seiyu wondered what this guy was up to. He replied that he could say the same about them. Red Moon had helped them a lot. They shook hands. Leng Jing's face was contorted with hatred. Stunned, Seiyu couldn't understand what had happened. It was the pressure. He felt like he was just a toy in his hands. The guy felt like a tiny bug on the hands of a huge giant. At that moment, the strange Bree approached and removed Leng Jing's hand from Seiyu. He said that Leng Jing was the president of the association. Why would he fight with a jerk who didn't even have level 20? Laughing, Leng Jing replied, "Sorry. He is the owner of the sword and G, so he got a little overexcited." Gritting his teeth in anger, Seiyu thought that even though he had shown some of his strength, he realized that Leng Jing was much stronger. Smiling, the president told Seiyu not to worry. This time, he was not here with bad intentions, and he had good news. He told them to listen carefully. As the president of the Red Moon Association, he announced that in a month, they would open an S-level dungeon that would be controlled by the Red Dragon Association. All players below level 40 could come and test themselves. In addition to high-level loot in the dungeon, anyone who can wound the dragon will earn a place in the association. The audience cheered. The Big Four organizations had taken all the S-level dungeons for themselves, and now they were opening them up to everyone. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The president said that players who were dissatisfied with peaceful life should come and vent their pain and anger. Let them come and fight. The Red Moon Association will provide the best conditions for battle. This time, Seiyu won't run away with his tail between his legs. After all, he's right. The president looked at Seiyu searchingly. Seiyu frowned and looked at Leng Jing. After the competition, Shen and Seiyu went to the lair of the strange Bree. Seeing what he was holding in his hand, Seiyu asked if it was a divine healing dragon scale. Bree answered correctly. He called them here. Does that mean he changed his mind and will give it to him? Pushing him away, Bree said that he hadn't defeated him, so why should he give him the scale? Seiyu then asked why he had called them here. He replied that Shen Yunyao had defeated him. He would give the divine healing dragon scale to her. Seiyu said that his logic was strange. Looking at the scale, Seiyu asked if he should swallow it or rub it on himself. Yun Yao sighed and replied that he was an idiot. She tossed it to him and told him to use the divine healing scale on Seiyu. In an instant, the boy's entire body was enveloped in bright healing energy. His HP was restored. He shouted, "Awesome." Now he just needed to get to the Red Dragon dimension to collect these scales and get rid of the side effect. The girl said that he had recovered, but hadn't he forgotten about Wan Ji's request? He replied that he remembered after her question. Taking out the letter, the guy said that Wan Ji had asked him to give the letter to Bree personally, but snatching it from the guy's hands, the strange Bree shouted that he should not show him anything related to her. A device fell out of the letter. A voice said that the presence of the strange Bree had been detected nearby. The system would be activated automatically. A stun gun shot. Excited, Seiyu asked what was going on. The device said it hoped dear Bree had received a 100% charge of the disarming light that she had been developing for years. Bu Li-chan, Wan Ji, and she would bring back his sweet side. Clutching the device in his fist, Bree shouted furiously that it was infuriating him. Glaring at Seiyu and Shen Yunyao, he yelled at them to get out of there. The girl replied that her instincts told her that something incredible was about to happen. Seiyu asked what was going on. A moment later, they saw the strange Bree's armor falling apart. They were shocked by what they saw and froze with their mouths open. When the armor completely fell apart, they saw an angry girl in front of them. With her eyes flashing furiously, she said she asked the two of them to get out of there. But since they saw her, the girl clenched her fist, releasing a stream of energy. Excited, Seiyu shouted, "Strange Bree, or rather, Miss Bree. They didn't do it on purpose." Hitting the wall with her fist in anger, the girl shouted that it was all because of Wan Ji. It didn't matter. They were still useful, so she wouldn't hurt them yet, but they couldn't tell anyone about what had happened. Breathing a sigh of relief, Seiyu promised that he would fulfill her request without any problem. The girl said her name was Ya Lin. Seiyu asked if Bree was not her real name. She remembered how Xiao Wangji had called her pretty. She must be new to their association. What was her name? Why wasn't she answering? If she remained silent, he would call her Bree. Ya Lin replied that she didn't care. Let him call her that. She said that Seiyu was going to the Red Dragon dimension. He replied that it was a S-level dungeon. There would be more than just dragon scales there, but also rare items and a bunch of points. He can't miss this opportunity. Lin asked if he thinks Leng Jing will just let him get away with his antics. Does he know that Leng Jing also has a sword and Ji? He is cunning and cautious. The fact that he is still alive is most likely part of his plan. But now he's encouraging him to go to the Red Dragon dimension. That means he's confident he can defeat him. The guy replied that he also has his own reasons for going there. He can't hide from him forever just because he's scared. Ya Lin said he was an idiot. Who told him he needed to hide? Let him continue to gain strength, and he won't have to be afraid of this guy. And she can teach him how to properly wield the sword and Ji. Frowning, Seiyu asked why she was helping him. She had already helped him a lot by giving him the divine scale. Standing up, Ya Lin replied that there was no reason, but if he said she should, then he could think that she just liked it, and she snapped her fingers. Stunned, Seiyu realized that a portal had opened behind him and shouted that he hadn't agreed yet. Kicking him into it, the girl replied that he should finally shut up. Stunned, Shen Yunyao cried out to Seiyu as she watched him disappear into the portal. A few moments later, Seiyu crashed to the floor with a bang, raising a cloud of dust. As he got up, he cursed and wondered what kind of place this woman had sent him to. At that moment, he saw Ya Lin, who said that this was usually her training center, but now she would teach him here. Smiling, Seiyu asked if she was joking. She replied that he should prepare to be disappointed. Let him defeat her, or be ready to die by her hand. The next day, Yunyao came to school, and the students began to greet her from the doorway. She thought that Seiyu had also come early today. Could it be because of the system's assignments? She called out to the guy and was shocked by his appearance. The girl asked why he looked so exhausted. He replied that it was nothing special. He was just thinking about the problem Ya Lin had left him. Because of this, he hadn't slept all night. She asked what he was writing, and Seiyu replied that it was a particularly valuable book on how to level up. He had spent the whole night writing it. Opening it, Yunyao asked what it was. She didn't understand at all. He was trying so desperately to become stronger. Had he really decided to go to the Red Dragon dimension? The guy replied that he definitely had. By the way, had she heard about the dungeons where energy items drop? Shen replied that she hadn't. But hadn't they met an all-knowing ally just recently? Smiling, Seiyu replied that she was right. This kid must know for sure. He wrote to Faye to ask if he knew where to get energy equipment. The guy rudely replied, asking who he was. He didn't remember having a fat pig among his friends. Angered, Sei-yu thought this brat wanted to die. He wrote that he was Sei-yu. Faye replied that now he understood why he looked so familiar. The guy wrote that he didn't know about such equipment, but he had heard that Sei-yu was going to the Red Dragon dimension. He was ready to show him a dungeon where no one had ever been before. Sei-yu thought that leveling up was important. However, right now, alienation would be the fastest way to increase his power. The teacher said that the material in this lesson was key knowledge for the current topic. You can't get distracted. He asked him to stand up and answer the question about the law of conservation of energy. Sei-yu stood up and answered that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be converted from one form to another. The teacher was sure that everything was correct. In addition, energy can also be converted between different forms. Fire and lightning have been natural disasters since ancient time, but throughout history, people have been able to use them to usher in the steam age and the age of electricity. Similarly, atomic energy can be destructive in the form of an atomic bomb, but if the conversion of this energy is controlled, they will be able to create aircraft carriers that do not need supplies for 10 years. He asked if the law of conservation of energy could be applied to the use of energy. The teacher replied, yes. If they can control the use of energy, they will have hope for entering a new energy era. And then humanity will discover unlimited possibilities. Thinking deeply, Sei-yu thought about controlling energy consumption. Limitless possibilities. He shouted, I understand. The teacher said that if he knew the answer to the question on the board, then please. Running out of the classroom, Sei-yu replied that his stomach hurt a lot, and he needed to use the restroom. Watching this, Shen Yunniao wondered what this guy was up to. Running out of the classroom, Sei-yu asked Faye to send him the location of the dungeon. He had a great idea and couldn't wait any longer. He had to check it out right away. Checking the map, Sei-yu quickly reached the portal to the dungeon. He decided that it didn't matter what type of dungeon it was. He would figure it out when he got there. When he entered, he learned that it was a C-rank dungeon called Abandoned Frontier. Clutching his sword tightly, Sei-yu smiled and shouted, Monsters, come out! At that moment, he heard a shout behind him. Big brother, run! Turning around, he saw Faye, who was tightly bound and held by Ghostface. Smiling, Ghostface said that they hadn't seen Sei-yu in a long time. The guy was shocked to see them. Faye shouted that Ghostface had kidnapped him and sent him a message to lure him here. It was a trap. Throwing the guy aside, Ghostface shouted furiously that this runt was too noisy. Since Sei-yu was already here, he shouldn't even think about escaping alive. Suddenly, he shouted at Yinglin to attack, and Sei-yu realized he wasn't alone. He saw a girl wearing gloves with sharp claws. Ghostface said that even though the boss didn't allow them to cause him trouble, it was difficult for him to contain his rage from last time. Yinglin's ability allows her to control mechanical dolls. In a place like this, where the remains of mechanisms are everywhere, her power literally doubles. At that moment, Sei-yu saw the debris of mechanisms rising from everywhere. They turned into huge puppets and surrounded Sei-yu on all sides. Ghostface said that Sei-yu's overload mode could only be maintained for a short time. He was capable of a battle of attrition. Excited, Faye shouted for his big brother to be careful. He replied that Faye shouldn't worry. Since he called him big brother, he wouldn't let him die. How dare Ghostface use such dirty tricks? In that case, he would be the first victim of his new technique. All this time, he had not paid attention to the problem of energy distribution. The energy surge skill attacks an area. If you aim at a specific enemy, a lot of energy will be wasted. Overload mode covers the entire body with energy, increasing all of its attributes. But it also consumes a lot of energy. Since energy is conserved, he must not waste it. Instead, he will concentrate the energy in one point and use it to attack. Holding his sword in front of him, he shouted furiously for the phantom face to attack. Angered, the enemy replied, "What nonsense! He has no chance of winning." At that moment, metal puppets rushed at Sei-yu from all sides. He thought he had no energy items to activate alienation, but he remembered Ya Lin's words. If he wanted to become stronger, he had to awaken the next level of alienation. He needed to find energy items as soon as possible. According to Ya Lin, he would be able to activate alienation if he had enough energy. He had been healed by the dragon scale. His HP was at its maximum. He shouted for the absorbing blade to use his body as a source of energy. Let it obey his will. The system reported that the energy had exceeded the maximum value. Transition to loading mode. The attacking metal puppets, led by Ghostface, attacked Sei-yu. Lying on the ground, stunned, Faye saw a powerful stream of energy separate from Sei-yu's sword. The guy spun the sword and the puppets, broken into pieces, flew in different directions. Angered, Ghostface asked what was going on. This skill was not in the information. Sei-yu laughed that it was a success. To reduce energy consumption, he wanted to create a smaller form of sword alienation, but he couldn't imagine that it would be so greedy. that it would consume his entire right hand. He shouted, "Come on, Ghost Mask, come forward. He feels just great." The ghost face shouted, "Did Seiyu really think that his little tricks would scare him? Yin Lin, come forward." Extending her sharp claws and hissing, the girl rushed into the attack. At that moment, huge metal puppets rushed at Seiyu, swinging their sword. Dodging, Seiyu noticed that, unlike complete alienation, his speed had increased significantly. Instead of using overload mode, he concentrated his energy in his sword. He would easily deal with these puppets. At that moment, shouting for him to go to the other world, the ghost face rushed at Seiyu. Waving his sword, Seiyu said that they were just doubled, too weak. Cursing furiously, Ghostface shouted for all the clones to attack. Smiling, Seiyu asked if Ghost Mask still didn't understand. For him, destroying doppelgangers and puppets was like chopping vegetables. His plan to exhaust him was no longer effective. Was he still going to continue? He didn't have the strength left to create doubles. Let him give up. But the enraged Ghostface was not going to give up. He shouted, "Shut up!" and rushed into the attack. Seiyu's sword arm and Ghostface's two huge swords clashed in confrontation. At that moment, the enemy released fire and thunder doubles. Seiyu asked if he still had an ace up his sleeve. What a coincidence. He did too. He used his improved energy burst skill and struck. Getting close, Seiyu shouted for the Ghost Mask to take it. He tried to cover his head with his sword, but Seiyu's energy attacked from all sides. The Phantom Mask's swords broke, and he fell to the ground. Sei said he had lost. Smiling, the Phantom Mask asked sarcastically if Seiyu was sure about that. He saw the doppelganger grab Fei. The doppelganger told him to lower his sword. Otherwise, he shouldn't blame him for being cruel. Continuing to laugh, the phantom face shouted for Ying Lin to deal with him. The girl silently watched what was happening from above. Suddenly, a stream of fire appeared, and a scream rang out, telling him not to even think about it. Yun Yao, who had suddenly appeared, shouted that he was the only one they would deal with. She said she saw Seiyu slip away strangely, and decided to follow him. She didn't think he would get into such a mess. Little Fei was glad to see her. The ghostly face cursed that this girl was ruining everything again. Frowning, Seiyu asked if these were his last words before his death. Smiling, Ghostface told him to listen to him. It was just a misunderstanding. He replied that he had a chance to escape. In any case, he was a man who was going to give him all his points. How could he refuse them? The system reported that he had destroyed the player Ghostface. Waving his sword arm, Seiyu told Yinlin that now she was alone. The girl replied that she did not want to continue this meaningless battle. She would make him experience a real nightmare when he came to the Red Dragon dimension. Looking at her, Shen Yunyao smiled and asked if this man was sure. At that moment, she realized that this was the woman who had attacked them back then. Releasing a burst of flame, she shouted furiously that Yinlin had stopped and wasn't even thinking of running away. A deadly stream of fire flew toward the girl, but she managed to hide in the portal that had opened. Frowning, Seiyu asked what was going on. There was no point in chasing after her. Yun Yao replied that she was fine. At that moment, Fei ran up to Seiyu and shouted that he was so grateful that he had saved him again. From now on, he would always be on his side. Just let him work for his big brother. The guy replied that Fei didn't have to thank him. In fact, the reason why the Ghost Mask kidnapped. Smiling, Fei replied that he understood. That meant that Big Brother now owed him a favor. Shen Yunyao said that it was still unsafe here. They'd better leave. Pleased, Fei suggested they go to his house. His house was very large. Seeing Fei's house, Seiyu asked in astonishment if he had bought this mansion with the money he exchanged for glasses. He replied that was not the case. This house belonged to his foolish father. Besides, the amount of money that could be exchanged for glasses was limited by level. At that moment, the servants rushed out onto the porch, and the girls cried out, "Finally, the young master has returned." Stunned, Seiyu looked at the maids in surprise, and wondered if this was what the world of the rich was like. The maid rushed to hug Fei, and cried out that he had been gone for 2 days. She had been very worried. Turning to Seiyu, the maid asked if they were private tutors, hired by the young master. She thanked them for taking care of the young master. They dragged Seiyu and Yun Yao along with them, inviting them inside. Dinner was already ready. Fighting off the maid, Fei shouted for his sister Li to let him go. He could walk on his own. She replied that the young master was still as shy as ever. She said that this was the dinner they had prepared for them. Let them enjoy their meal. Looking at the huge table with a variety of dishes, Seiyu thought it was scary. The maid told the young master to call her if he needed anything. Seiyu said he didn't expect Fei to be so rich in real life. He replied replied that only his foolish father was rich. Since childhood, his life had been planned by his foolish father. Even his daily life was controlled by him. He was tired of this boring life, but he felt reborn when he entered the game. In the game world, he had freedom and could do whatever he wanted. Because he was a navigator in the championship, he lost one of his life goals. Seiyu smiled, wondering if he blamed him for that. He replied that Seiyu was going to the Red Dragon dimension. This was the first time that an S-rank dungeon would be accessible to ordinary players. He must take him with him. Seiyu replied that Fei must prepare himself better. If he teams up with him, he will encounter even more dangers. At that moment, Shen Yunyao said that she would also go to the Red Dragon dimension. Frowning, Seiyu asked if that woman, Ying Lin, was somehow related to Yunyao. She replied that she had been looking for her all this time and had finally found her. This happened a few months before they met Seiyu. As a beginner, she was lucky to meet a player who was willing to help. Her name is Xiao Yu. She said that although Shen was a beginner, he fought quite well, and if she wanted, she could team up with her. After teaming up with Yu, they successfully cleared many dungeons. She also became her best and only friend in the game. But the good times didn't last long. One day, they were attacked in a dungeon. The person who attacked them was a woman named Yin Lin. To protect her, Yue decided to cover for her while she ran away. She shouted for Yunyao to get out of there, using the exit device. But the girl replied that Yunyao shouldn't worry. She knows how strong she is. But after the incident, she didn't see her online anymore. If only she hadn't run away then. All this time, she kept comforting herself that maybe Yu had quit the game, or just deleted her from her friends. But if Yin Lin is from the Red Moon Association, she's afraid that Yu is gone. But that doesn't matter now. They just have to work hard to collect points. Shu Yu replied that in the worst case, if something bad had happened, she could bring her back for 100 million points. Angry, Shen shouted that he was mocking her. How could it be possible to bring someone back to life? He asked if this wasn't a game that could make all wishes come true. He played it because he believed in it. From the very beginning, he had decided to collect 100 million points to revive his girlfriend who had died. Surprised, Shen Yunyao realized that this was the reason why he was working so hard. Looking at Shen and Fei, Xie Yu asked why they were looking at him as if they didn't believe in him. They shouldn't worry, he would definitely do it. Besides, they had made some progress. Thanks to their help, they had earned a lot of points recently. If they continued in the same vein, 100 million would not be a problem. Smiling, Shen thought that if it was him, then this goal might really be achievable. Smiling, Fei said he understood everything. They had more than 10 days left, and he would gather all the information he could about this dungeon. They clinked glasses, and said they would drink to going to the Red Dragon dimension and earning a bunch of points there. Before that, they decided to go to the A-rank dungeon, the Cave of Darkness. The player shouted that he had aggroed all the monsters, so let him defend. Smiling, the girl shouted that she understood and began shooting the monsters. To prepare for the S-rank dungeon, they followed Fei's advice and joined the booster team for points. Seiyu said that Jin Chang has masters even in this area. They really use every opportunity to earn money. Some low-level players have a lot of points, so they want to level up quickly. Realizing this, Jin Chang bought a lot of dungeons, in which there are many weak monsters, and developed this business. Seiyu also leveled up in this dungeon. The players said that a small battle had ended, and they had dropped a lot of equipment. Are there any takers? Picking up the spear, Shen Yunyao said that it would be good for close combat, and Seiyu said he would take all the low-level green equipment. The player replied that he had left it for Seiyu. Another player shouted to the leader not to forget to leave something for him. He would pay them double the price when they returned. In the end, Seiyu bought about 50 pieces of low-level green equipment at a low price. Surprised, Fei asked what he needed the equipment for. Shen said he was just weird. Seiyu smiled and replied that these things were useful to him. He pressed the button to detect equipment that could be absorbed and turned on absorption. His stats increased. A girl from the team told them to stop. The final boss was coming, and it was better for them to stay here. Let them hide behind these bones. It was the boss's blind spot. They had nothing to fear there. The guy said that this boss was a bit tedious. Even with them, it would take about an hour to destroy it. Let them stay hidden during that time. One of the guys said that leveling up for rich people is so easy that it's boring. At that moment, a huge monster, the possessed beast dungeon boss, appeared. The players rushed into the attack, with furious cries to destroy it. The girl shouted, "Good! His HP is dropping. Keep up the pace." A player complained that it was too hot here. They were taking too long to destroy the boss. This team of boosters was too weak. Fei replied that he should try it himself. Suddenly, a strange sound caught their attention. Turning around, they saw a crystal that had fallen out. A player said it was a goblin gem. If it was of good quality, it could be sold for a huge price. He rushed after it, deciding that since no one had noticed it, it was now his. Fei shouted for him not to come out of hiding. At that moment, the dungeon boss growled fiercely and turned away. Frowning, the player shouted, asking why the monster was behaving so strangely. Suddenly, he realized that the dungeon boss had bypassed his aggro and rushed to the side. Pleased with himself, the guy grabbed the crystal and shouted joyfully that he was rich. At that moment, the player shouted furiously that he was an idiot. Let him dodge. The monster rushed forward and delivered a crushing blow. The guy died. While shooting back, the girl thought, no. At this rate, all the clients would be destroyed by the boss. At that moment, Seiyu frowned as he watched the boss, who had noticed their presence. The girls cried out excitedly, asking what was happening. They didn't want to die. Their eyes were filled with terror. The enraged monster approached Seiyu and swung its huge paw to strike. The leader of the boosters decided that they were definitely doomed. But at that moment, Seiyu used his strength to swing his sword. In an instant, he dealt a powerful, crushing blow to the boss. The monster staggered. The system announced that the player Seiyu had successfully defeated the A-rank boss, the possessed beast. The boosters were in shock. Fei, overjoyed, shouted that it was his big brother. The girl was amazed that this guy had only needed one blow to defeat the boss. Who was this guy? At that moment, Seiyu said that he had become much stronger. His stats had increased. After 10 days of intense leveling, the day of the Red Dragon Dimensions opening arrived. A lot of people came. Fei said it was not surprising. There are two types of dungeons in this game. Team dungeons, which can only be entered as a team, and public ones, where there are no restrictions and you don't need to team up with anyone. Blood Moon opened the dungeon they had previously held. Many people are already saying that the association is not capable of clearing the dungeon. Seiyu was surprised that there were dungeons beyond Blood Moon's control. Shen sighed and said that he needed to be more careful. He should not forget that he makes a lot of enemies wherever he goes. A few moments later, the entrance to the dungeon opened, and Seiyu said they could enter. Suddenly, Seiyu noticed that the players had stepped aside. He asked what they were doing. Why had they cleared the way? Fei shouted for his big brother to move aside quickly. Seiyu turned around. The players were following him, and the guy said that the players were getting rougher and rougher. Some of them didn't even know that they had to make way for the Jin Chang Association. The girl replied that it was all because he was too weak and didn't look like a member of a big association. The players recognized the Jin Chang Association. One of the best newcomers, Mao Du, the Hidden Sword. He told Qian Wu that she was underestimating him by saying that. He was the most handsome guy in the association. You could say he was a celebrity. The players learned about another newcomer to the Jin Chang Association, the flexible Qian Wu. At that moment, Mao Du froze in place and said, "Wait a minute, that's..." Frowning, Seiyu thought, could someone be looking for a fight? He said he was Seiyu and asked what he wanted. But Mao Du pushed him away and told him to move. He wasn't looking at him. Taking out a rose, he said it was for Miss Yun Yao. Her performance at the last race was amazing. Angry, Seiyu wondered what this brat was up to and where he got the rose. Mao Du said that if it wasn't too much trouble, she could teach him how to race in her spare time. The girl smiled. Seiyu thought she shouldn't fall for it. He definitely wants to take advantage of them. But suddenly, Mao Du was grabbed by a huge robot arm and lifted into the air. Smiling, Wang Zi said he was too slow. The guy yelled at her to let him go. He had something important to do. Wu asked her to shut him up. The players were surprised that Jin Chang had sent more than 2 people. Ga Wang Zi was here, and next to her was the association's #1 specialist, Jin Chang Chenji. She asked Wang Zi if there was anything tasty in the dungeon. The girl promised to take her to a dragon meat barbecue later. Wang Zi noticed Seiyu and thanked him for delivering Bree's letter. They would meet later. Exhaling, Seiyu thought that he had tensed up when he saw Wang Ji. He was lucky that everything turned out okay. At that moment, they noticed that the Blood Moon Association had also arrived. The Blood Moon Association had also sent its strongest new members. Yun Yao thought she knew that this witch would come. With her, according to rumors, was the never-failing demonic destroyer, Zhen Tang. Stopping her, Seiyu told Yun Yao not to be impulsive. It wasn't time to catch her yet. She replied that she understood. Suddenly, everyone heard a shell flying towards the Blood Moon people. Zhen Tang caught it with his metal hand. There was a powerful explosion. The players were stunned. What kind of idiot would attack at the entrance to the dungeon? Standing in clouds of smoke, an enraged Zhen Tang asked who dared to do this. At that moment, 2 armed men and a girl appeared in front of him. They shouted that Zhen Tan had destroyed their association. The players smiled. Did these little people really want to die? They dared to provoke a demonic man. The men rushed into the attack and shouted that even if they died today, their revenge would be fulfilled today. With his eyes flashing furiously, Zhen Tan shouted, "Insignificant ants," and drew his sword. In a couple of moments, with swift movements, he destroyed their swords, splitting them into small pieces. He said that they were not even worthy of being destroyed by him personally. He set his mechanical dog, Lu Xiaowan, on them. She rushed at the men, but suddenly, swift sword swings shielded them from the ferocious dog. The players recognized the Lionheart Association, the elf sword master of their association, Long Ting. He said that with Lionheart, Red Moon should not even think of doing anything rash. With him was the Holy Black Knight, who, according to rumors, could single-handedly clear the A-rank dungeon Lin ran. She said that Zhen Tang would not allow him to break the rules. Zhen Tang said again, "These annoying flies," and called on Ying Lin to leave. Long Ting told everyone to listen to him. As long as their Lionheart Association was here, the Pillar of Righteousness would not fall, and all evil would be punished. Looking at them, Seiyu said that they had such noble manners, the complete opposite of Jin Chang. Shen replied that they adhered to morality. The players said happily that Lionheart had also joined. Only the members of the Grey Mist did not show up. Perhaps they would not even come. That meant it was their turn. At that moment, a man came out and told everyone to stop. They could not enter yet. The players asked who he was and why they could not enter. He replied that he was an employee of the Blood Moon. He would brief them on the situation. 122 people had already arrived at the dungeon. That was a lot. To enter, they would use a lottery system. Each of them would receive a random number. They had to enter strictly in numerical order. The players were upset that even though they were teammates, they would enter separately. Seeing his number, Fei said that 22 would enter quite early. Shen's number was 25. Smiling, Fei said that with his big brother's luck, his number would surely be in the top 10. Stunned, Seiyu said that they were making fun of him. He actually had the lucky number 122. Smiling, Fei told Seiyu not to think it was so unfair. They would defeat them all for him. He replied that he wasn't worried about such a small number of points at this level. He was worried that it would be too dangerous for them to go there together. Frowning, Shen told him to stop looking down on them. He should think about how he would catch up with them later. Little Fei told his big brother not to worry. They had already worked out a plan. If they could overcome them by force, they would fight. If not, they would hide. They would enter the first level. The Tomb of the Snake Spirit would be their meeting place. As soon as they connected, they would go to the second level. Number 22 was announced, and Fei hurried in. Seiyu told them to be careful. He thought it wasn't that simple. The first level was a pit of 10,000 snakes. Terrifying snakes attacked from all sides. A huge snake tried to swallow Mao Du, and he had to use his defense. Finally, he managed to use his skill and made a deep cut in the monster. After destroying the beast, he laughed that it was easy. He didn't even mess up his hair. Throwing his sword over his shoulder, he shouted to Wang Ji that it was time to leave. But suddenly, the severed snake grew 2 heads instead of 1 and grabbed the guy. Swinging her sword, Qian Wu ran towards him. She said that Mao Du was perfect as bait. Looking at the monster's red eyes, she smiled, saying that he had lured all the snakes from the surrounding area here. Shouting, "Calm down, just stay calm." Chen Ji joined them. She said that as long as she was there, she would not let anyone get hurt. The girl created a protective water field. Mao Du smiled at the snake and shouted that it couldn't get him. Smiling, Wang Ji ordered the robot to fry the monsters in front of her. Turning on full power, the robot fired a stream of devastating shells. There was a powerful explosion. The girl said that no one would survive such an explosion. The satisfied girls praised each other for their excellent teamwork. Angered, Mao Du shouted, "Yeah, right. They roasted him like a piece of charcoal. They did it on purpose." Sighing, Chen Ji asked why there were only snakes here. At least they would see some delicious food here. Wang Ji replied that she couldn't eat everything. At that moment, the players of the Jin Chang Association were being watched by the players of the Blood Moon. They decided that they would not be harmed. At that time, the other players were desperately fighting a huge monster. Suddenly, they were stunned to see that this thing could also spit fire. So it was a fire-type monster, and they needed to use ice mode. Long Ting activated his ice blade. He used the Snow White freeze technique, and the snakes turned to ice. Using the enchanting sacred light and the punishment of justice, Lin Ran smashed the frozen snakes to pieces. The players shouted joyfully that it was the Lionheart Association. They were saved. Lin Ran said that this place was called the Red Dragon Kingdom. But why did they only encounter snakes on their way? He replied that in legends, snakes are called Little Dragon, and snakes can turn into them. Every snake wants to become a dragon. The girl shouted that they needed to get to the final level quickly, following the plan. Ying Lin said that this was to be expected from Lionheart. Their individual abilities were as powerful as their teamwork. Zhen Tang replied that this was true. They could become dangerous enemies, but they were not their main target. Surprised, Yin Lin asked if it was not them. Could there really be someone worse that the president had told him to come here personally? He replied that everything was correct. He had already made all the necessary preparations. Her task was to keep an eye on the others so that they would not interfere. This man was very strong. He had to be fully prepared to make sure he could hunt him down. At that moment, Shen thought that Faye had told her to move in that direction. Why hadn't she met him yet? A strange sound alerted her. A moment later, a huge, terrifying snake appeared right in front of her. Wielding her sword, the girl screamed furiously at the disgusting monster. Using her reverse scythe skill, she dealt a powerful, crushing blow to the beast. She obtained a red, poisoned tooth and thought that, as expected, valuable resources could be obtained here. At that moment, she heard a suspicious noise again and went in its direction. Swinging her sword, the girl wondered what kind of monster could be hiding here. She had already raised her sword to strike, but at the last moment, she hesitated and stopped. Throwing off his horned skin, Faye shouted for his sister Yoon to stop. It was him. Frowning, the girl asked Faye what had happened to him. He replied that it was his special cloak against monsters. With it, he no longer feared further monster attacks. The girl said that this thing was disgusting. Let him take it off. For now, let him just follow her. He said that they would reach the end and wait for Seiyu. Lin, who was following them, reported to Genton that the two had not yet met him. At that moment, it was announced that player 122 could enter. Seiyu shouted furiously that he had been waiting forever because of stupid rules. Let them just wait. He would leave no stone unturned in this dungeon. He ran into the dungeon and looked around. Seiyu realized that this place was huge, and he didn't know where to go to meet Yun Yao. At that moment, Jen Tang met him and said that Seiyu had finally arrived. He had no choice but to go there, because his journey would end there. Frowning, Seiyu thought that he knew he was plotting against him, and this lottery had been planned from the very beginning. That's good. It means he doesn't need Yun Yao and Fei. Seiyu smiled that the blood moon needed to come to him all together, so as not to meet them one by one. Frowning, Jen Tang replied that he should not rush. For the injustice he had committed against the blood moon, he would pay. Jen Tang threw a deadly blade at him. Surprised, Seiyu thought that swordsmen like him did not fight in close combat. Why did he throw his sword? At that moment, Jen Tang fiercely attacked Seiyu, who managed to put his sword in front of him. Saying that Seiyu had good reflexes, Jen Tang shouted, "Lo Shawan." Seiyu realized that he had a pet, so it was 2 against 1. Seiyu shouted, "Devouring blade, change form, fast sword form." Smiling, Jen Tang asked if that meant he also had a transforming weapon. That's very interesting. He never misses prey like him. Smiling, Seiyu replied that he was no slouch either. He didn't even flinch the first time. Throwing his sword at Seiyu, Jen Tang shouted that now he himself would not die too quickly. But Seiyu managed to parry the blow. The 2 strongest opponents clashed in confrontation. Gritting his teeth in rage, Seiyu thought that this guy's strength was equal to his own, and he could also teleport to his sword. Seiyu dodged to avoid the deadly blow. Enraged, Jen Tang swung his sword and rushed to attack the guy. Throwing swords at Seiyu, he shouted that the guy shouldn't even think about running away. To dodge the blow, Seiyu had to crouch down. He teleported to the deadly swords and again attacked Seiyu furiously. Frowning, Genton threw his sword. Seiyu cursed under his breath that this guy was constantly throwing swords. Rapidly approaching, Genton attacked Sei again. The guy barely managed to dodge. Furiously swinging his sword, the Blood Moon player shouted that this was the end. He had no chance. Seiyu would not be able to dodge his powerful attack. Smiling, Seiyu asked what if he didn't need to dodge. Using the Dark Touch skill, Zhen Tan released a powerful stream of energy and shouted that he should go to the other world. He attacked Seiyu fiercely. The guy gritted his teeth in rage and repelled the attacks. Frowning, Zhen Tang was surprised to see that Seiyu had managed to block his attack. Ozo is becoming more and more interesting. The prey has not been caught yet, but in any case, he is weak. If he defeats him, he will get a lot of points. Shouting, "Let him try," Seiyu gritted his teeth and repelled his opponent's attacks. Suddenly, a powerful explosion rang out between them, enveloping everything around them in smoke. Frowning, Zhen Tan asked who else was there. The girl who appeared told the boys to stop. According to the peace treaty, members of associations of similar strength have the right to observe and prevent the other team from engaging in senseless fights. In the name of the Grey Mist Association, Oga forbids the 2 of them from fighting. Annoyed, Zhen Tan said that the Grey Mist Association never interfered in the affairs of others. Don't even think about stopping. Those who interfere will die. He tried to strike, but the girl deftly dodged, flying away on her broomstick. At that moment, Seiyu said that it didn't matter what the Grey Mist Association needed here, but to him, they were all enemies. The stunned girl asked again, "Enemies?" In fact, she had come to save him. A moment later, she activated a teleportation spell and transported the boy away. An angry Gen Tang shouted for Luo Shawan to stop her immediately. Deflecting the mechanical dog's attack, Seiyu shouted for her to be careful. A few moments later, a powerful pillar of energy appeared, carrying them away from there. An angry Gen Tan cursed furiously. Let the Grey Mist Association wait. They would meet again. A few moments later, Seiyu opened his eyes and couldn't understand how he got there. He shouted at the girl from the Grey Mist that she had done it and where they were. She looked around and asked where they really were. She had definitely set the exit coordinates. Seiyu shouted to stop messing around. She had done it. How could she not know where they were? The girl replied that she had found it. It was all because he had pushed her when she activated the spell. Now they were far from their destination. They had been teleported to a border zone. Seiyu asked how far from their destination. She replied that it was about 2 days' journey. He shouted furiously for her to take him back. The girl replied that she couldn't. The spell she had used required time to recharge. However, even if the ability was restored, she couldn't teleport him. Her goal was to keep him away from the battlefield. Seiyu asked what she meant. He wouldn't let her go until she explained everything properly. Sighing, the girl replied that if he left, he would die in this dungeon. He might not know this, but the president of Grey Mist has the gift of predicting the future. On that day, she prophesied that failure was coming. Many lives would be lost. The chosen one would also perish in black flames. The other participants were currently carrying out their mission. She could only rely on herself. She hoped that she would be able to save that person. She wanted to teleport him away from there, so that he would not be in danger. Seiyu was amazed that there were such incredible abilities in this game. Even if the prophecy is true, he has no business with the Grey Mist Association. Why is she helping him? She replied that his weapon is related to an item that their association is looking for. It was important to them as a national treasure. The girl said her name was Lin Mare. Let him take care of her. They had to wait for her skill to recover. They would teleport away from there, and her mission would be complete. Seiyu replied that he couldn't stay there. Stunned, Lin asked if he didn't believe her. He replied that he still had allies elsewhere. If what she said was true, they could be in great danger. Lin Mir asked again about the ally, but returning to where they needed to be would require a long and dangerous journey. Her mission was to protect him. If anything happened, she would teleport him away immediately. Seiyu replied that if she was afraid, she could stay here. At that moment, Yunya and Faye were walking through the dungeon. The boy said she was beautiful. Walking with her was much better than walking with his older brother. She asked Seiyu if he had made contact. He replied that he was probably still near the entrance. It seemed that Seiyu had lost the signal. At that moment, he heard Seiyu. The guy said that the dungeon was much more dangerous than he had thought. He was in trouble. He told the guys to stay where they were and wait for him to find them. Faye replied that he couldn't hear him well. He said he was going to look for them. Seiyu shouted that he was an idiot. Let them stand still and not move. Let them wait for him. He would arrive a little late. Not understanding what had happened to the signal, Faye asked again, telling them to walk at the same speed so he could catch up with them. Shen Yunyao suggested going to the next level. Seiyu cursed at the connection. Why could he hear him clearly, but Faye couldn't? Looking at Lin Meyer's movements, Seiyu asked what she was doing. The girl replied enthusiastically that it was the first time she had seen the Yiji blade so close. She could touch it. Seiyu told her to back off. At that moment, the navigation system notified them that a faster route had been found. He wanted to switch. They chose the new road. Seiyu said that this fork had been mentioned, but the new path on the right looked a little suspicious. Lin Mir suggested scouting it out. Suddenly, she said that it would be better not to take this path. She sensed very strong magic. Smiling, Seiyu replied no. They were definitely going this way. A faster route and stronger monsters, just the way he liked it. Without giving her time to react, Seiyu rushed forward. Fighting huge monsters, Seiyu said that, as expected, the monsters here were not so easy to defeat. To help him, Lin Mayer released fireballs to destroy the monster. She told him to be careful. This type of monster is poisonous. They would be in trouble if they were wounded. Angered, Seiyu shouted that she had scared him, and all his experience points had been stolen. Lin Mayer apologized. He said he would finish off the rest himself. The delighted girl saw that the weapon had transformed. So this is the G-Blade. She flew on her broomstick after Seiyu, who was fighting the monsters. Wielding his sword, Seiyu delivered crushing blows, destroying the poisonous monsters. She thought that, as expected, the G-Blade had exceptional power. But even if the president's prophecy was not wrong, she hoped that her teleportation skill would recover faster than they ran into any trouble. Satisfied, Seiyu said that he seemed to have gained enough experience. His level had risen again. Suddenly, they realized that there was no way forward. There were only these strange statues. Frowning, Lin said that the navigation system should not be wrong. Smiling, Seiyu replied that it was worth taking a closer look. Didn't it look like a puzzle? In front of them were 4 different colored spheres and 4 stone pedestals. And on top of that, there were 4 huge dragon statues. Based on his gaming experience, the different colors of the spheres represented dragons with different attributes. They had to place each sphere on the corresponding stone pedestal. The one with fins on its face was a water dragon. The blue sphere was suitable for it. The one with moss growing on it was a forest dragon. The green sphere was for it. And the one with spikes on its head was an electric dragon. The yellow sphere was for it. Lifting the ball, Lin Mayer asked if they just needed to place these spheres on the pedestals. When all the spheres were in place, they noticed rays of light stretching out and realized that it had reacted. Frowning, Seiyu wondered if it was too simple. Even by trial and error, there were only 16 possible combinations for the arrangement of the spheres. Suddenly, they saw a bunch of different monsters that had appeared out of nowhere. They blocked the exit. Seiyu realized that the puzzle had not been solved. Gritting his teeth in anger, he thought he understood that it wasn't that simple. He was clearly missing something. The light of the 4 types of dragons gathered around the altar. It seemed that something was to be summoned from there, but there were no more spheres. What to put in the middle? At that moment, Seiyu had a revelation. The summoning of a huge dragon in this blood moon dungeon. What if it was related to the fire egg he had received a long time ago when he destroyed the kite? The girl asked what they should do. A bunch of monsters were about to attack. They probably needed to fight their way back. He replied that she should wait a little. First, he wanted to try something and place the fire egg in the center. Stepping aside a little, they noticed that there was some kind of reaction. The girl screamed. It worked! The monsters stopped. The huge beasts stood motionless. Looking at the egg, Seiyu said it was strange. Why hadn't it hatched yet? A moment later, they were blinded by a bright flash, and a stream of energy was released. The egg flew away. Seiyu furiously asked, "An attack from above? Who is it?" They heard the cry of ignorant humans. Not only did they step on forbidden ground, but they also dared to break the forbidden seal. It was unforgivable. A huge dragon circled above them and promised that they would pay for their ignorance with their lives. Frightened, Lin screamed, "No!" It was terrible pressure. It was a monster of disaster. There are rumors that a special class of monsters can be found in the dungeons. They are intelligent. They can communicate with players and possess terrible power. Only players at the president level can fight them. This type of monster was called a disaster monster. They tried to put up a defense against the attack. Lin Mayer screamed that they were no match for it. It was better to run away. Angered, Seiyu cursed fiercely. His strength was truly extraordinary, but he had little HP left. Lin wondered if this was the disaster mentioned in the prophecy. That meant she herself had put Seiyu in danger. With eyes flashing fiercely, the huge dragon ordered his servants to go and tear these people to pieces. Frightened, Seiyu and Lin Mir watched in horror as the monsters gathered to attack. Using the double heavenly shield, Lin shouted that she would delay them. Let Seiyu destroy the monsters at the gate so they can return. Wielding his huge sword in all directions, Seiyu replied that he understood. The girl shouted faster. She couldn't hold back the attacks of the monster of disaster. She couldn't hold out any longer. He decided that even though there were many small monsters here, they weren't that strong. They still had a small chance of escaping. But that puzzle had to be solved on the last move. Then why didn't the egg hatch? What did he miss? Suddenly, the boy noticed that the fiery egg was moving. Those symbols also began to move. At that moment, Lin Mir cried out in despair that she could no longer hold back. Seiyu finally figured out what was going on. He shouted joyfully that he understood. It's there. At that moment, Seiyu swung his sword and knocked down some of the stone statues. Huge pieces of stone flew down with a crash, landing on the ground. Rushing to the girl, Seiyu shouted that he would help her hold back the attack. He released a powerful stream of energy through the double shield. Lin Mayer shouted that they were saved, but he sealed the exit. They no longer had a chance to escape from here. Smiling slyly, Seiyu replied that they didn't need to run away from here. Following the moonlight, the candle would illuminate his heart. That was the message of the egg. She noticed that the shadow on the ground was approaching the egg. If he was not mistaken, it was because the red moon in the sky was also moving slowly. This meant that eventually, the shadow of the moon would cover the egg completely. Raising his sword, Seiyu shouted, "Rise up!" Powerful streams of energy flew upward. The dragon shouted that he couldn't believe that a simple man like him was capable of such a thing, but he was still too weak. At that moment, Seiyu shouted for Lin Mir to watch. The girl said, "The shadow of the moon." The moon's shadow completely covered the egg. In the next part, the candle will light its heart. Seiyu shouted for her to use her fire skill to attack the egg. The girl wondered whether or not to attack the egg. Seiyu shouted for her to trust him. Otherwise, the moon's shadow would disappear. Obeying Seiyu's order, Lin Meyer released a powerful stream of fire at the egg, but nothing happened to the egg. Sei Yu got angry. It should work. He didn't know any other ways. But after a few moments, they noticed that the egg stirred and began to crack. The system congratulated Sei Yu on successfully completing the mysterious dragon egg quest. The reward for the mission was to pet a small, first-level winged dragon. Disappointed, Sei Yu said he had hoped it would be some kind of secret weapon. But what use was this tiny dragon? Holding the dragon in his hand, Sei Yu was surprised to notice that it seemed to want to bite its owner. Lin Meyer said not to underestimate them. Pets in this game have great potential. Like Zhen Tan's hunting dog, they can display exceptional combat abilities when paired with players. The system reported that it was a fire dragon, whose power had been sealed. The Chosen One could pay points to unlock the power of the Dragon King. At that moment, the huge dragon flying above them cried out that they had indeed broken the seal. Now they could all die together. The girl cried out, "No!" The monster of disaster was attacking again. There was no escape. Giving the little dragon 10,000 points, Sei Yu shouted, "Unlock the wing protection skill." The little dragon's eyes flashed, and in an instant, a powerful stream of energy was released. The girl screamed, "What is that?" A huge fire dragon sat in front of them. Sei Yu shouted, "Evolution. Cool." The fire-winged dragon roared fiercely. The attacking dragon asked if he really wanted to be destroyed by him again. Giving up another 5,000 points, Sei Yu shouted, "Unlock the skill floating in the wind." The dragon descended to the ground, and Lin Meyer decided that it wanted them to ride it. At that moment, the monster of disaster let out a thunderous dragon roar. They climbed onto the back of the fire-winged dragon, and Sei Yu shouted, "Forward!" The dragon flew upward, escaping the deadly attacks of the monster of disaster. At that moment, Sei Yu jumped onto its back and shouted that it was his turn now. He struck it with a crushing blow from his sword and rushed forward. He was rapidly approaching the terrifying head. The dragon shouted that he was a foolish man. The fire-winged dragon unleashed powerful streams of fire. Lin Meyer shouted that she would cover him, delivering a crushing blow with his powerful sword. Sei Yu shouted furiously, "Take that!" He had already stopped the successive attacks on the way. Now let it explode. He jumped off, and the girl caught him. Sei Yu shouted, "Well done." Lin Meyer replied that they needed to hurry while they still had a way out. Suddenly, the monster stood in their way. Sei Yu shouted that he knew it wouldn't be easy to defeat it. It looked like it wanted to surround them. The enraged monster of disaster shouted that the pathetic humans shouldn't even think about escaping. At that moment, the girl shouted, "Sei Yu, duck!" She still had little mana left, but she hoped that the teleport would work and take them away from there. She shouted, "Teleport!" It opened right in front of the monster, and they rushed into it. Leaving the monstrous monster behind, they shouted joyfully, "It worked!" Exhaling, Sei Yu said, "Thank God they got out. They would never have been able to defeat such a powerful enemy." Smiling, Lin Meyer said, "Now he understands that her teleportation abilities are amazing." Sei replied that she shouldn't forget. It was because of her abilities that they ended up in such a situation. She told him not to complain. She picked something up on the way back. When he attacked the dragon, it fell out of it. It was a sacred restorative dragon egg. It could heal anything. Since they got out of there thanks to Sei Yu, she would give it to him as a gift. He was happy about the egg, even though he had wasted a lot of time because of her. He thanked Lin. She replied that there was no need to thank her. She was just doing what she was told. Now, with Yan Ilun, they would be able to return to where they were originally. The girl thought that they should have successfully saved Sei Yu from his fate. All that remained was to hope that they would not get into new trouble. Sei Yu ordered Yan Ilun to speed up to the maximum. He needed to meet with Yun Yao and Fei. At that moment, Fei and Yun Yao were fighting a monster. Shouting that he shouldn't be underestimated, the guy threw a projectile at it. There was an explosion. Yun Yao swung her sword and shouted that he was doing well. They had enough dragon souls to clear this level. Fei should get ready. They would soon go to the next floor. He asked if she wasn't rushing too much. Sei Yu might not be able to keep up with them. At that moment, Fei noticed something on the radar. There was a red dot, and it was following them. Could it be some kind of monster? But soon the guy realized it was a person. Frowning, Yun Yao asked who it could be. A moment later, a huge fireball fell right in front of them. Yun Yao screamed, "Who is it?" Landing on the ground, Yin Lin wondered if they had been discovered. She said that she was not interested in them. The reason she was chasing them was to find Sei Yu. Why wasn't he with them yet? Furiously swinging her sword, Yun Yao rushed into the attack and shouted, "Stop talking!" The girl released a devastating stream of fire, but Yinglin managed to dodge it. Releasing protective threads, Yinglin asked why she wanted to destroy her so fiercely. Angered, Yun Yao asked if she had forgotten. She had attacked her and Xiao Yu, and what she had done to her. Xiao Yu smiled. That's what it was. But she couldn't tell her that. She wanted to destroy her so badly that she didn't notice she had fallen into her trap. One wrong move, and it would be the end of her. If she wanted to live, she'd better tell her where Seiyu was. Frightened, Faye shouted, "Sister!" He didn't know what to do. Seiyu hadn't returned yet. Lowering her head, Yunyao asked if she had destroyed Xiao Yu after all. But if she waited a little longer, she would take revenge on her, even at the cost of her own life. She broke the threads of the trap, and despite her injuries, rushed into the attack, shouting that she should go to the other world. Wielding her sword, Yunyao promised to repay Xiao Yu's suffering tenfold. Yinlin thought she had gone mad. She promised that she would now show her the real picture, and she would understand that she was a weak and pathetic girl. She summoned a huge, obedient stone golem monster that rushed at Yunyao. The golem's huge stone hand loomed over the girl, ready to destroy her. Yunyao said that from that very day, when she found out that Yinglin was from the Blood Moon Guild, she trained in anticipation of meeting her. Now that day had come. Shocked, Yinglin saw her huge golem fly apart. Delighted, Faye shouted, "Oh, so that's what my sister spent her points on." The girl shouted to change her equipment and received a blitz form made of feathers. Sitting on the dragon's back, Sei thought that if he flew at a constant speed, he would arrive there soon. He decided to try to contact. He shouted to see if Faye could hear him. The guy said that Yunyao and Yinlin had started a fight. Sei shouted for them not to mess with her. Let them run away and hide. Smiling, Faye asked what his brother was talking about. Sister Yunyao is amazing. She won't lose. Looking at her new equipment, Yinglin said that she seemed to have become much stronger than she was before. But don't underestimate her. She is still one of the Blood Moon's B-rank destroyers. She summoned poisonous sandworms, and the ground beneath them stirred, releasing huge monsters. Faye thought he had heard that there were 4 ranks in the Blood Moon, from A to D. The demonic mask was only rank D. Indeed, Yinlin was rank B. According to the analytical system, her power was higher than that of her sister Yun, but Yunyao would not lose. At that moment, huge poisonous sandworms loomed over the girl. She said that she had known about Yinglin's abilities for a long time. The instantaneous form of the feather increased her speed. No matter how strong her beasts are, all she needs is to defeat her. Furiously releasing destructive threads, Yinglin shouted that Yunyao was naive. Let her not hope to reach her so easily. Huge monsters surrounded Yunyao. Gripping her sword tightly, Yunyao shouted, increasing her speed to full power. She moved swiftly, destroying monsters, and ended up behind Yinlin. Delivering a powerful, crushing blow, the girl shouted that she had been caught. Seeing that her HP had fallen by half, Yinlin couldn't believe it. She shouted that Yunyao was caught. The girl's whole body was bound by pink threads. Tying the girl tighter and tighter, Yinlin shouted furiously that this time she would not get away. She ordered the terrifying poisonous monsters to crush her immediately. Resigned to her fate, and realizing that there was nothing she could do, Yunyao closed her eyes. She remembered Yui. Her spear was broken. She asked if it was because she was clumsy. This was already the 3rd broken spear. Yui replied that it was because her combat power was too high, and her weapon couldn't handle such power. Her adaptability was superb. In the past, she had mastered bows, arrows, daggers, and battle axes. She could also adapt to any fighting style, which could be useful in battle. Yunyao replied that she shouldn't cloud her mind. She was useless. Then Yui said that she happened to have a spear with her. How about giving it a try? She thinks everything will be fine this time. She promised that she would never throw away the spear that Yui gave her, and she would use her own style to unleash her full potential. She changed her form again, and a reinforced form appeared on her. The threads binding her flew in different directions. Spinning the spear, she delivered a crushing blow, decapitating the terrifying monsters. Stunned, Yinglin was surprised by the new form again. At that moment, Yunyao shouted for her to go to the other world. Knocking the girl off her feet, she held her spear to her and said that Yinlin had lost. If she wanted to stay alive, she should say why she had attacked Yu. It was she who had destroyed her. The girl asked if she was laughing at her. Yu was a high-level player. She couldn't have defeated her. Shocked, Yunyao couldn't believe it. She screamed that when they met, Yui had disappeared. Sighing, Yinlin replied that it was all because of the chapter. Suddenly, swords flew towards them. A moment later, there was a powerful, devastating explosion, and Yunyao jumped aside. A player with a huge sword appeared in front of her, and furiously asked where Seiyu was. At that moment, the stunned players saw a fire-winged dragon. They wondered what kind of monster it was. Maybe it was the boss. One of them noticed that someone was flying on, but no one believed him. No one in the game had ever had such a means of transportation. Sitting on the dragon's back, Seiyu asked Yan Ilun to fly as fast as possible. He understood that Yun Yao would be in trouble if she rushed into battle against him. At that moment, Yun Yao was fighting fiercely with Gen Tan, not intending to give in. His eyes flashing furiously, he asked her again where Seiyu was. She shouted that she had nothing more to say to him. He should get out of her way. She still had a conversation with Ying Lin to have. Looking at Fei's characteristics, he realized that this guy was the A-rank Blood Moon Destroyer, Gen Tan. He had enormous power. He summoned his deadly pet, which held a fiery sword in its teeth. A few moments later, a huge fiery whirlpool appeared in front of the girl. With his eyes flashing furiously, Gen Tang threw his swords at the girl. At that moment, huge streams of flame surrounded Yun Yao from all sides. She struggled to dodge the deadly attacks of the Blood Moon Destroyer. After another attack, the girl's HP dropped significantly. She didn't have enough strength. Watching the battle, little Fei screamed in horror. "Sister!" He could see that she was injured. The girl realized that things were bad. She had expended too much energy before this battle and could no longer keep up. Hovering over her, Gen Tan said that if she didn't want to talk, he would destroy her. And then Seiyu himself would come looking for her. Gritting her teeth in rage, Yun Yao realized that this was it. She couldn't escape. Suddenly, she heard Gen Tan scream. Jumping off the dragon, Seiyu shouted furiously for him to back off. Smiling, Gen Tan swung his sword and shouted that he had been waiting for Seiyu. There was a powerful explosion, and Seiyu shouted to ask if Yun Yao was okay. She replied that she was. Enraged, Seiyu shouted furiously, asking how Gen Tan dared to lay his hands on her. He released a powerful stream of energy. Wielding a fiery sword, his opponent stood his ground. Delivering a crushing blow, Seiyu shouted furiously for Gen Tan to go to hell. At that moment, Lin Meyer approached Yun Yao and used her healing skill. The surprised girl asked who she was and why she was helping. She replied that her name was Lin Meyer from the Grey Mist and that she was on her side. Shocked, looking at his broken sword, Gen Tang said that Seiyu was indeed strong. Looking at him with fury, Seiyu shouted to stop talking nonsense. Releasing his energy, Gen Tang replied that so be it. He would be the one to send him to the other world. At that moment, his power doubled. Fei said that Gen Tang's power was incredibly high. They needed to retreat. Excited, Lin Meyer said that it was the ghost of Yin Tan. It was better not to mess with him. She used her fog formation skill, and everything around them was enveloped in fog. Gen Tan asked if this was the work of the Grey Fog Guild. Furiously swinging his sword, he shouted that they shouldn't even hope to escape. He delivered a crushing blow, destroying the target, and realized that it was not a human. Pleased with himself, Fei shouted, "Gotcha!" It was one of his puppets. Suddenly, Gen Tang saw a huge fire dragon grab Seiyu. Unhappy, Seiyu shouted, "Why are you retreating? If you don't deal with him now, he'll come after you anyway." Smiling, Fei replied that his brother shouldn't worry, because they were heading to the island of the Heavenly Dragon. Perhaps he wouldn't catch up with them. Besides, not everyone had a flying mutant. Everyone else sat on the dragon's back. On the way to the cliff on Dragon Sky Island, there were many high-level monsters. It was very difficult for ordinary players to pass it. Fei asked how his brother managed to get such a good pet. It felt like they were cheating. He replied that it was a long story. Let him think that he found it along the way. Yun Yao thanked Lin Mir for the treatment. She feels much better. The girl replied that there was no need to thank her for such a trifle. At that moment, the system warned that the boss location was ahead. Suddenly, the fire-winged dragon became a baby again. Surprised, Yun Yao said that he was so cute. Fei told Bro to get ready. This was the boss of the 5th level dungeon. Until now, there had been few people capable of defeating such a boss. But according to the information he had, the team that successfully destroyed such a boss would receive at least 1,000,000 points. Thinking about it, Seiyu decided that if he cleared 100 S-level dungeons, he would get 100 million points. He would make every effort to defeat the dungeon boss and get bonus points. Suddenly, Lin Meyer shouted "Danger!" and barely managed to put up her shield. They didn't understand where the attack was coming from. Rushing to the entrance, Seiyu asked if it was a frontal attack. It could be. Running up to the gorge, he was horrified to discover that a fierce battle was taking place there. The dungeon boss was being attacked from several sides at once, and his HP was rapidly falling. Cursing, Seiyu said they were too late. The Lions and Golden Toad guilds were already attacking the boss. Fei asked what they should do. If this continued, they would get the reward for the boss. Suddenly, Lin Mayer told him not to worry. There was a rumor that all S-rank dungeons had a hidden mechanism. Even if the Lions and Golden Toad guilds joined forces, it wouldn't be so easy to defeat the boss so quickly. Wang Ji struck a blow and said that it was impossible. He wanted to cheat again. He had recovered again. At that moment, the terrifying boss unleashed a powerful stream of fire, and the player barely had time to raise his shield. Seeing Sei Yu, Long Ting asked if he had really come here after all. Fei said that they had been discovered. Does this guy want to destroy them? Frowning, Sei Yu asked if he was Long Ting from the Lions Guild. Let him not think that he could just brush them off like that. He replied that, on the contrary, he wanted them to help them defeat this boss. But Wang Ji shouted for him to stop acting on his own. If he recruited more helpers, there would not be enough points for everyone. Mao Du supported her, saying that the Golden Toads had a lot of people. But Lin Ran asked what they could do. The sacred dragon had the power of regeneration. The only way to achieve victory was to interrupt its regeneration. They had been fighting it for several hours. Their strength was running out. Sei Yu understood. They want to use it to interrupt the dragon's regeneration. But if they join, the points will decrease. He suggested making a bet. They will fight together, but the team that delivers the final blow to the boss will take 60% of the points. Smiling, Wajie replied that it seemed they hadn't had enough fun last time in the Golden Toad Guild. They agreed. After thinking about it, Long Ting replied that the Lions would also accept this condition, as long as the dragon was not defeated. Looking at Yun Yao, Sei Yu asked if her wound hurt. She could hold back the finishing blows. She replied that she would not hold him back. He asked if Meyer wanted to join them. She replied that it was a rare battle, and there was no reason to refuse. On the contrary, until this task was over, she would be here to protect him. Sei Yu said he wanted to rely on Fei. After discussing all the details, they drew their weapons and rushed into battle with a cry. At that moment, in the real world, the player came to the president and said that they couldn't control this woman. He wanted them to open the battlefield to eliminate her. The president sighed. Oh, that woman. A whole group of them couldn't stop one woman. Did they really want to make the Blood Moon Guild a laughingstock? The girl asked if she should go and take care of the intruders for him. He replied that it wasn't necessary. Since the woman had walked through their door, was there any reason to refuse her? At that moment, the door burst open, and the guild members scattered in different directions. The president asked if it was her. He hadn't seen her in so long, and it turned out he had missed her all this time. The girl replied that he should stop talking to her like that. They weren't close. Smiling, the president of the Blood Moon asked what had made her visit him in person. She replied that he should stop idling. Leng Jing knows why she is here. She is only here to confirm something, what he is going to do with Sei Yu. Even the Snow Alkins were destroyed by him. Even he is afraid of the devouring sword. Angered, he shouted at her to shut up and not say that in front of him. Yi Biao asked what was wrong. He was too afraid to admit it now. Leng Jing said she was here for revenge. She came to him for some reason. The girl replied that he shouldn't worry. She would destroy him one fine day. He replied that she was a boring woman. He didn't want to cause a bloodbath on his own turf. He could tell her what he was going to do next, but first, let her win. She replied, fine. She was no longer the same person she used to be. Biao, picked up the cue. The girl quickly pocketed all the balls. Only one ball remained on the table. She said, sorry, but she had won. Laughing, the president replied that it was unbelievable. Fine, whatever she wanted. He snapped his fingers, and a screen appeared in front of them, showing Sei Yu and his teammates preparing to battle the boss. Frowning, Ya Biao asked if it was a live broadcast from the Red Dragon area. He answered correctly. Let her watch carefully. The answer she is looking for will soon be clear. At that moment, the glowing dragon in the dungeon released a powerful flame. Putting up a water shield, Chen Ji told them not to worry and to leave the defense to her. Destroying the monsters, Qian Wu shouted for them to leave the minor bosses to them and take care of the boss themselves. Smiling that it was rude, Mao Du dealt crushing blows to the monster, releasing deadly divine light and a rain of swords. Lin Ran said that the Golden Toad had done well. The rest was up to them. She shouted, 1,000 swords attack! And devastating swords flew at the dragon. Watching them, Sei Yu was amazed at their power. The strength of the Lion Guild was immense. At that moment, Long Ting said that now was not the time to be distracted. They needed to focus on the boss. Using the wind attribute and rushing into the attack, he shouted for everyone to move away from the boss immediately. He unleashed a dragon tornado on the glowing dragon, dealing the most damage. Smiling, Wang Ji said that although the lion's attacks were a little harsh, she was not going to give up on the boss. She unleashed deadly projectiles, and powerful explosions enveloped the boss's body. Waving his sword, Sei Yu suggested that Yun Yao join the attack. Releasing 2 streams of deadly energy at once, they rushed to attack the dragon. At that moment, Lin Mayer created an attacking, reinforced formation. Deadly blows rained down on the sacred glowing dragon. Frowning, Long Ting said that if everyone continued to attack as they were now, even if the boss could heal himself, he would not be able to cope. Smiling, Wang Ji said that the boss had almost no HP left. Let Zhen Ji do it. Shouting Roger, the girl released huge streams of water energy. These were restrictive bubbles that bound the other players. Trapped in a water ball and angry, Long Tin shouted, "What is Wang Ji doing?" Smiling, the girl replied, "Isn't it obvious? The boss will be theirs." She shouted that little Jin Ang should use all the energy she had accumulated. The destructive energy cannon unleashed a deadly stream on the dragon. Destroying the water ball, Long Tin shouted that Jin Chang shouldn't think that such nonsense could stop him. Combining the attributes of fire and earth, and using a combined attack, he created an explosive attack of molten stone. Excited, Yun Yao asked Seiyu what to do. They couldn't leave these bubbles. If this continued, the boss would be destroyed by them. He replied that there was no need to be afraid. Since these people had abandoned morality, they didn't have to be polite either. Let him not forget about Fei. Smiling, Wang Ji asked if he meant this little kid. What could he do? Enraged, Fei shouted, "What little kid? He'll be bigger than her." At that moment, Seiyu shouted for Xiao Fei to stop messing around. The boss could be stolen. Let him release the dragon. Fei released the baby and shouted, "Come on, dragon." Seiyu thought that after defeating the unlimited supersonic enemy and destroying the ghost, he had already earned a lot of points. If he could destroy the 5th level boss, the reward would be even greater. Right now, he could rely on it. He used the fire roar skill of the Dragon King, which he had never used before. He shouted for the dragon to use this skill. He used 50,000 of his points as the price for this. At that moment, the dragon successfully received the enhancement points and began to transform. At that moment, Seiyu shouted furiously to remove all power restrictions. The removal was complete, and Huang Long took on the form of the Flame King. Stunned, Wang Ji asked in bewilderment why another boss-level monster had appeared. What was going on? Stunned, Fei shouted, asking where Bro had found such a pet. He wanted one too. Smiling, Seiyu replied that he didn't think he was that outstanding. The dragon told the master that the points he spent on him would be converted into his attack power. All his enemies would be engulfed in his roaring flame. The dragon released a huge flame. A huge stream of deadly flames rained down on the glowing dragon. In an instant, the 5th level boss was completely engulfed in deadly fire. The system congratulated Seiyu on successfully destroying the Holy Light Dragon King boss. Seeing that the boss's HP had been completely depleted, Lin Ran said that in the end, Seiyu was the one who destroyed the boss. Long Ting replied that having such an evolving pet, Seiyu was not so simple. Upset, Wang Ji cried out how this could have happened. She was close to achieving this destruction. Chen Ji told her not to be sad. A Qian Wu said that she would never have thought that Seiyu had such a powerful pet. Nothing could have led them to victory. The dragon shrank again, and Seiyu shouted that he was incredible. Fei thanked the dragon for the huge number of points. At that moment, Yao asked what was going on. Leng Jing wanted to show her. It seems that he underestimated the young Seiyu. His growth rate is much faster than that of ordinary players. And that's why he's his enemy. That's right, isn't it? The president flashed his eyes and replied, "What if he says that everything is going according to plan?" She asked what he meant. Leng Jing replied that the destruction of the light symbols was the rise of darkness. Suddenly, a huge, devastating dark dragon appeared behind the players. It was rapidly approaching the unsuspecting people. Suddenly, it grabbed Seiyu. The shocked players shouted, "What's going on here?" The system announced that the transformation was complete. Holy Light, the Dragon King of Darkness, the soul-devouring dark dragon. His skill is sacrificial offering. If someone destroys the Holy Dragon King, they will become a sacrifice. Duration, 2 hours. After 2 hours, the dark dragon returns to its normal holy form. Stunned, Lin Mir said that this boss can no longer heal himself, but he is capable of resurrecting. Next to Qian Wu lay the body of a recently destroyed small monster. Striking the revived monster, Mao Du shouted for her to look around. He couldn't understand what was happening. He had almost destroyed it. Why was it coming back to life? Wan Ji's eyes widened in horror as she cursed and asked what was going on. All the monsters they had destroyed had been resurrected and joined the dark side. Frowning, Long Ting shouted for them not to be afraid. They could destroy them again if they were reborn. First, they had to save Seiyu. He used the Tornado Wind attribute attack and directed it at the Dark Dragon. The terrifying monster glared fiercely at the humans, who were interfering with him. A moment later, he released a devastating stream of deadly dark flame. The players did not understand what was happening. His attack was directed at the island. His powerful blow left a huge hole in the rock. The players were in shock. An agitated Long Ting shouted to ask if everyone was okay. The robot Wang Ji was badly damaged. The leader of the lions shouted for them to be careful. The reborn dragons were attacking, and they were much stronger than before. Frowning, Yun Yao told Mir that the situation was quite bad. They needed to find a way to save Seiyu and retreat. At that moment, Long Ting called headquarters and asked what was going on. He shouted about what was happening in the Red Dragon area, but all the screens showed an error message. The mountain of destroyed dragons suddenly revived throughout the Red Dragon area, and they became much stronger. Now the number of destroyed players continues to grow. The entire Red Dragon area is in one huge crisis. Long Ting asked how this was possible. In other words, it is now impossible to escape from the dungeon. After creating the last part of the spell, Mir said that if it didn't work, they would have to rescue Seiyu from the boss fight. She shouted the teleportation array. Activation. It was the only chance to save the guy. The system reported that the teleportation array was not allowed. The selected target is a game NPC, and NPCs cannot be teleported. Hearing these words, the girl was shocked. The dark dragon's eyes glowed with blue flame. He prepared to attack again. Again and again. He unleashed a deadly stream of devastating dark flames. The players were engulfed in the dark flames of the Soul Eater. Excited, Long Ting shouted fearfully to Lin Ran. Falling to the ground, Mayer realized that she had been doing everything wrong all this time. The evil beast they had encountered earlier was not one of the president's predictions. This was the disaster predicted by the president. Many people would die, including Seiyu, and she couldn't do anything about it. After the boss loses, he turns into a demonic soul-devouring dragon. Then he turns back into a holy soul dragon after devouring enough souls. It's an endless cycle. He can't lose. Now Long Ting is the only one who can fight. He has expended too much energy. How can this boss be defeated? It seems as if everyone must perish in this dungeon. Unwilling to give up, the leader of the lions continued his unequal battle with the monster. Suddenly, he saw Zhen Tan. The Blood Moon player said that Long Tin was confusing him. A pathetic dungeon like this could render his lions helpless. Angered, Long Tin replied, "Stop talking nonsense. Even he would find it difficult to defeat this boss." He replied that raiding a dungeon and winning are two different things. It's all because the boss is too strong. That's because he absorbed the power of his victim. If he wants to defeat the boss, he must destroy Seiyu. Long Tin is too righteous to choose that method, isn't? Suddenly, Yun Yao shouted, "Stop talking nonsense." He wanted to destroy Seiyu all this time, and now he wants Long Tin to do it for him. Sighing, Long Tin replied, "No." In fact, his words are the only way. Widening her eyes in horror, Yun Yao asked him if that was even possible. She asked if there was another way to get to Mir. She replied that she didn't know. She had already used all her magic. Grabbing her weapon, Wang Ji shouted that if this continued, they would all die here. At that moment, Biao shouted furiously. So that's Lang Jing's plan, to make Seiyu a victim using the dungeon's game mechanics. And if he destroys the monster now, there's a high chance he'll get the devouring blade. He replied that the dungeon's mechanics had almost wiped out his entire team. The girl shouted that she would not let him win. She opened a portal, but the president shouted that Ya Biao was still so hot-headed. He released a powerful stream of energy that blocked all of the girl's movements. He said that he had made this high-level prison especially for her. It would take at least half an hour to get out of it. In the meantime, she could watch. The show was just beginning. At that moment, Long Ting said that he never thought he would work with Zhen Tan. He replied that his goal was to destroy Seiyu and nothing else. The Dark Dragon released a new stream of dark flames. Zhen Tan shouted at his pet to become his strength and combine energies. Holding his sword in front of him, he released a devastating stream of energy and rushed into the attack. Shocked, Faye said that now that the two had united, Bro could really die, and there was nothing he could do about it. The two strongest players released their energy and drew their swords, rapidly approaching the dragon. They attacked him from both sides at once to destroy their main prey. Getting close, Zhen Tong delivered a devastating blow, and a powerful explosion rang out. At that moment, Long Ting was approaching Seiyu, who had been captured by the dragon. Waving his sword, he said that it was for the common good. Let Seiyu not blame him. But suddenly, Yun Yao stood in his way. She stopped the lion's deadly sword. He asked if she even understood what she was doing. If this continued, not only would she be unable to do anything, but everyone here would die. The girl replied that she knew. But how could she just stand by and watch as another teammate died before her eyes? Sighing, Long Ting said he understood that it wasn't her fault. He asked her to forgive him and threw Yun Yao aside. His power pinned Yun Yao to the rock, preventing her from even moving. At that moment, Zhen Tang shouted that Long Ting had wasted too much time. Angered, Yun Yao shouted that this should not happen, and rushed forward, preventing Ren Tang from striking Sei Yu. They clashed fiercely in a devastating confrontation, neither allowing the other to win. Enraged, Zhen Tang shouted furiously that this woman was getting in the way too much. He struck her with a deadly blow, and shouted that they would all go to the other world together. The girl was wounded, and her devastating spear shattered into pieces. Frowning, the president of the Blood Moon watched the confrontation unfold. For as long as Yun Yao could remember, she had been a straight-A student. She was awarded certificates and applauded by her classmates. She had always been the pride of her parents, who rejoiced in her first-place finishes. However, her classmates avoided her because of her intelligence. They said that Shen was #1 not only in this school, but in the entire province. But all she remembers is studying in complete solitude. No one was friends with her. That was until she met Yu. She was her first real friend. However, Xiao Yu also disappeared, plunging her into despair. Once again, she was alone. But then she met Sei Yu, although initially she planned to use him for her own benefit. His determination gave her hope. He is the reason she believes she will see Xiao Yu again. So how can she just stand by and watch as they try to destroy him? Xiao Yu had suffered misfortune because she had run away. But now, she was here to stay. She simply couldn't go on living, knowing that she had just run away. Suddenly, a stunned Zhen Tang saw her spear flash and transform. Its bright energy began to spread around, and finally reached Xiao Yu. Suddenly, the boy's eyes flew open, and he looked around in bewilderment, trying to figure out where he was. At that moment, through the pitch darkness, he saw a bright beam of light above. In the bright rays, he saw the image of Yui calling his name. He stared at the girl, mesmerized. Reaching out to her, Sei Yu asked excitedly what Yui was doing here. She replied that she was saving him. Didn't he want to revive her? He would never be able to do that if he died himself. She believes in him, and they will see each other very soon. Sei Yu looked at Yui sadly. At that moment, the president of the Grey Mist Guild announced that the future had been changed. A powerful force had changed everything. At that moment, a stunned Fei and Lin Mir looked on in surprise at what was happening. Sei Yu, who had regained consciousness, approached Yun Yao, put his hand on her shoulder, and apologized. In the blink of an eye, he broke Zhen Tan, and fiercely told her to leave the rest to him. Shocked, Zhen Tan asked how this was possible. How did he manage to escape from the soul-devouring dragon? At that moment, a new wave of dark energy was released by the terrifying monster. Frowning, Sei Yu asked who was watching everything that was happening. A moment later, the huge soul-devouring monster hovered over the heads of Yun Yao and Sei Yu. Laughing, the president of Blood Moon shouted that he had appeared. He was right. Stunned, Yabiao asked how. It couldn't be that an S-rank boss was so easily defeated by an ordinary player. He replied that he wasn't defeated, but rather reborn. And yes, that skill was not one that ordinary players could use. Widening her eyes in surprise, the girl asked again, "An unusual player?" And he thinks she'll believe that. The president replied correctly. He is different from the other heterogeneous swordsmen. He is the one he has been looking for so long. The fourth heterogeneous sword. Suddenly, Sei Yu noticed that this light was blocking the dark dragon's attacks. Stunned, Yun Yao said that it was also healing her wounds. Now she remembered that it was the weapon Xiao Yu used. Suddenly, the girl heard a voice that said when Yun Yao would hear it. She must have already left, she asked Xiao Yu in amazement. The voice continued that she was very sorry that she left without saying goodbye, but she would always protect her. Yun Yao pressed the spear and realized that Xiao Yu had been protecting her all this time. The voice told Sei Yu that she had complete control over the dragon. He said this voice in surprise. The president shouted, "Fantastic!" Now all he had to do was show him the power of the two different swords together. The devouring blade was activated. Let it take this darkness and consume it. In a few moments, the terrifying dark dragon was destroyed and torn to pieces. Receiving the dark wings, Sei Yu held Yun Yao in his arm and said that everything would be fine now. If anyone dared to stand in their way again, he would destroy them.